Travis slid a folder across the boardroom table and said, "This is the best way to bring you back without disrupting the company." I didn't touch it. We were inside the Quonset hangar on Airport Street. A medevac helicopter sat beyond the glass wall, its side panel open. 2 mechanics were working underneath it. Every few seconds, one of their tools struck metal. The sound carried into the room. I looked at Travis. Bring me back to what? He kept one hand on the folder. A consulting role. I'm the chief operating officer. You were. The board members went quiet. 3 people looked down at their copies. 1 woman closed hers completely. Travis was my husband. He was also the founder and chief executive officer of Harbor Air Response. That morning, he had chosen which one of those roles mattered more. I opened the folder. The pay was less than half my salary. I would have no staff, no authority over flight operations, and no vote in leadership meetings. The last page required me to waive any claim connected to my military absence. I looked up. You want me to sign away my position? No, Megan. I'm offering you a way forward. This says I left for personal reasons. His mouth tightened. You were gone. I was on active duty orders. You extended your time away. I was ordered into medical convalescence. Travis glanced around the table. He wanted everyone to see how patient he was being. Then he said it. You chose to prioritize the military and motherhood over this company. Harbor Air couldn't remain frozen while you figured out your personal life. Nobody moved. I could hear an electric ratchet outside the glass. I closed the folder. Who wrote that sentence in the board deck? We're not doing this. We're already doing it. He leaned back. The language reflects what happened. That was when I understood this wasn't a clumsy return meeting. He had prepared a record. He had put his version in front of the board before I entered the room, and he expected me to help him make it true. 3 months earlier, I had still believed I was coming home to my job and my husband. At 41, I was a lieutenant colonel in the Army Reserve. I had been commissioned in 2004, and I'd completed 3 deployments. None of that made me important inside my own kitchen. At home, I was the person who replaced the empty paper towel roll and reminded Travis not to leave coffee in his travel mug all weekend. We lived in North Kingstown, about 15 minutes from the hangar. Our house wasn't large. The kitchen floor dipped near the refrigerator, and the back door stuck whenever it rained. I kept my military papers in a locked desk in the small room we called the office. My mobilization orders were in the top drawer. So was the draft of the return request I planned to send as soon as I was released. I had always kept good records. Travis used to tease me about it. You've got a folder for the folders, he once said. That's why your aircraft stay where they belong. He had laughed and kissed the side of my head. I remembered that kiss later. Not because it was special, because it was ordinary. Harbor Air Response had started in 2015. Travis had the idea, 2 leased aircraft and enough confidence for 6 people. I handled operations. In the early days, that meant everything. I wrote schedules at our kitchen table. I found hangar space. I negotiated fuel contracts. I set up maintenance tracking and argued with vendors who assumed Travis made every decision. He was good at selling the company. I was good at making sure it could deliver what he sold. We worked long days, but we worked well together. If a storm was moving up the coast, Travis watched the radar while I called crews. If a hospital needed a transfer at 3 in the morning, I checked the aircraft and found the staff. He used to introduce me by saying, "Megan keeps us alive." Later, when the company became stable, he changed it to, "Megan runs the back end." I noticed the difference. I didn't fight over it. Before my mobilization in 2025, I spent nearly 6 weeks preparing the handoff. Every department head received a written list. Maintenance knew which inspections were due. Payroll had the reserve schedule. Dispatch had the updated emergency contacts. I held 3 separate meetings with Travis. During the last one, we sat in my office with takeout containers between us. He skimmed the handoff document while eating cold noodles. "This is excessive," he said. "It's complete. You'll be back before half of this matters. That's the plan." He tapped the page. "I can handle it. I know you can." He gave me a look. Do you? I set down my fork. I'm leaving you the information you need. That's not an insult. I didn't say it was. You didn't have to. He sighed and turned the page. At first, I blamed the tension on the mobilization. Travis never liked the Army having first claim on my time. He respected the uniform when other people could see it. At home, he treated my service like bad weather, something inconvenient that should pass quickly. The morning I left, he drove me to the reporting location before sunrise. We barely spoke. When I reached for my bag, he said, "Try not to volunteer for anything extra. It doesn't work that way. It always seems to with you." I watched him for a moment. "I'll call tonight." He nodded without looking at me. My orders weren't supposed to become complicated. I had completed the required medical screening. I was cleared for duty. I expected to finish the mobilization, return home, submit my request, and resume work. Then my body stopped cooperating with the plan. Heather Klein was the flight surgeon who examined me. She had a quiet voice and a habit of rereading the screen before she spoke. The second time she took my blood pressure, she removed the cuff and pulled her chair closer. "I'm grounding you," she said. "For how long?" "Right now, that's not the useful question. It's useful to me." "I know." She explained what she was seeing. She kept it simple. I needed medical care. I would remain in official duty status. I was not cleared for aviation duties. I stared at the floor between her boots. Heather waited. Finally, I asked, "When do I tell my command?" "After I enter the restriction." "And my civilian employer?" "You can notify them today." I let out a slow breath. She looked at me. "Is that going to be a problem?" "No." It came out too quickly. Heather didn't challenge me. She turned back to her computer and entered the flight grounding. Later, when maternity convalescence became necessary, she certified that too. The medical record stayed in the military clinic system. I didn't carry it around. I didn't send Travis private medical details he didn't need. I did call him. He answered from the hangar. I could hear voices behind him. "What happened?" he asked. "I've been medically grounded." "For what?" "I'll explain when you're somewhere private." There was a pause. Then a door closed. I told him enough. I told him I would remain on duty status. I told him there would be a convalescent period. I told him the dates might change. He didn't say anything for several seconds. Then he asked, "How long are we talking?" "I don't know yet." "Megan, I have staffing decisions to make. I understand. Do you?" I stood outside the clinic with the phone against my ear. A transport van pulled up near the curb. "I left a complete handoff," I said. "A handoff covers weeks. It doesn't cover an open-ended absence. It isn't open-ended. You just said you don't know." I said, "I don't know the exact return date." He exhaled into the phone. "I can't discuss this right now. You asked. I have a meeting." The call ended there. That was the first smaller thing that didn't make sense. Travis knew how military orders worked. He had lived through my third deployment. He knew an extension wasn't the same as walking away. Still, I assumed he was scared. We were discussing my health, the company, and a major change in our marriage. People don't always say the right thing under pressure. For the next several weeks, I sent brief updates. He answered some of them. When I wrote, "medical status unchanged," "I'll send my return date as soon as I'm cleared," he replied, "received." When I asked how flight operations were going, he wrote, "covered." When I asked who was handling my daily approvals, he didn't answer. I called him that evening. "Who has operational sign-off?" I asked. "Why?" "Because I need to know the handoff is working. You're on leave. I'm still the COO. You're not functioning as COO. That isn't what I asked." He went quiet. Then he said, "I've spread the work among the team." "Which team?" "Megan, focus on recovering." It sounded caring. That was the problem. Anyone hearing only that sentence would have thought he was protecting me. I stopped asking over the phone. I kept my messages short after that. I saved every response. I also wrote down the dates of calls. Not because I planned to sue my husband, I didn't. I was trying to prevent a misunderstanding. By the time Heather cleared me to prepare for return, I had a clean timeline. I sent Travis a written request for reemployment. I attached my mobilization orders and stated the date I was available. He called within 12 minutes. You sent this to Human Resources? Yes. You couldn't call me first? I've been calling you for months. That's not fair. What part? He lowered his voice. We need to discuss what coming back looks like. I know what it looks like. You don't, actually. I sat at the locked desk. My orders lay beside my keyboard. Has someone taken my position? No one has taken anything. That isn't an answer. I'm trying to manage a company, and I'm requesting my job back. You're talking to me like I'm the enemy. I looked through the office doorway. His running shoes were still beside the stairs. His blue coffee mug was in the sink. I'm talking to you like my employer, I said. That ended the conversation faster than I expected. 2 days later, he asked me to come to the board meeting. I arrived early. My access card still opened the hangar door, which gave me a small amount of comfort. A dispatcher named Carl looked up from the operations desk. Ma'am, he said, standing. You don't need to stand. He gave an embarrassed smile. Habit. Carl had worked for us since the early years. He glanced toward the executive offices. Good to have you back, he said. I'm not back yet. His smile faded. Right. He knew something. I could see it in the way he turned toward his monitor. Who's been approving mission changes? I asked. Carl rubbed his thumb along the edge of his badge. Mr. Hudson. Only Travis? Mostly. That word stayed with me. Before I could ask another question, the boardroom door opened. Travis called my name. The consulting offer was waiting at my place. Now, sitting across from him, I turned to the page that described my absence. The board deck called it voluntary personal leave. It said leadership had made a permanent adjustment after I became unavailable for family reasons. I read it twice. That was the second thing that didn't make sense. A mistake could happen in payroll. A supervisor could use the wrong code. This was different. Someone had chosen those words, placed them in a formal presentation, and given them to the board. I tapped the page. When was this approved? Travis folded his arms. The board was kept informed. That's not what I asked. One of the members shifted in his chair. Travis said, You were not available to perform the role because I was serving under orders and because you required additional recovery time. Certified military convalescence. He looked at me with a tired expression. You keep using technical language to avoid the practical issue. No, I'm using accurate language. The room went still again. I pushed the consulting agreement back toward him. I'm not signing this. His face changed. Only slightly. He had expected questions. He had expected anger. He had not expected a refusal. Megan, he said, don't make a decision based on pride. I'm making it based on the document. You should take the weekend. I don't need the weekend. If you walk away from this offer, I can't guarantee there'll be another one. I stood and gathered the board deck. Travis placed his palm on my copy. That stays here. I looked at his hand. Then I looked at him. You gave it to me as part of a proposed employment agreement. It contains confidential company information. So does the waiver you want me to sign. For a few seconds, neither of us moved. Then the woman beside me said, she should have the pages concerning her. Travis turned toward her. I removed the absence page, the role description, and the signature page. I left the rest on the table. It was a small win. 3 sheets of paper. Nothing more. But when I walked out of that boardroom, I knew 2 things I hadn't known when I entered. My husband had already changed the company's story about me, and he was afraid of letting me carry that story outside. I folded the pages once and put them inside my bag. Carl watched me cross the operations floor. He started to say something, then looked toward the boardroom and stopped. My access card opened the employee door. It did not open my office. I tried it twice. The reader flashed red both times. Through the narrow window, I could see my desk. Someone had moved the framed photograph that normally sat beside my monitor. It was a picture of Travis and me at the hangar's first anniversary. In the photograph, we were holding paper cups and standing under a banner that had been hung crooked. The frame was now on a shelf near the floor. Carl came up behind me. Try mine, he said. He held his badge to the reader. The light turned green. I didn't open the door. Who's using the office? No one regularly. Then why did my access change? I don't know. Carl said it while looking at the badge reader. I knew he was trying not to lie. There was a difference. Did Travis tell people I wasn't coming back? Carl lowered his voice. He said the leadership structure was permanent. When? A few weeks ago. My return request had gone in 2 days earlier. I looked through the window again. Did he say who approved it? No. Did you ask? Carl gave me a tired look. I have a mortgage. That answer was more honest than anything I had heard upstairs. I nodded. Thank you. He shifted his weight. I shouldn't have said anything. You didn't tell me anything confidential. His shoulders loosened a little. I walked away without entering the office. If I had used his badge, Travis could say I'd accessed company space without authorization. I didn't know if that mattered yet. I only knew I didn't want to give him a clean complaint against me. Outside, the wind off the bay had picked up. It pushed grit across the parking lot and rattled the loose corner of a Harbor Air sign. I sat in my car and called Travis. He declined the call. A minute later, a message appeared. In a meeting. We'll talk at home. I typed, my badge no longer opens my office. Please explain. He didn't answer. I stayed in the car for nearly 20 minutes. Part of me expected him to come outside. He used to do that after an argument. He'd wait until I was ready to leave, then open the passenger door and sit beside me. Sometimes he apologized. Sometimes he just sat there. Either way, I usually softened first. That day, the boardroom door never opened. At home, I placed the 3 pages in the locked desk with my orders and return request. Then I changed out of my suit and stood in the kitchen wearing socks and an old army sweatshirt. The house looked normal. There were dishes in the sink. A grocery list was stuck to the refrigerator with a lobster magnet. Travis had left a delivery box near the back door instead of breaking it down. I flattened the box and put it in recycling. Then I stopped. I had just left a meeting where my husband tried to remove me from the company we built. I was still cleaning up after him. I left the next box where it was. Travis came home after 7. He carried his laptop bag in one hand and a paper sack in the other. I got Thai, he said. I was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of tea. He put the food on the counter. Did you eat? No, I got the curry you like. I watched him unpack the containers. For 15 years, food had been our easiest way back from a fight. Travis would bring something home. I would get plates. We would talk around the problem until it became small enough to step over. He opened a drawer. Where are the serving spoons? Same place they've been. He found one and set it beside the rice. I didn't move. Finally, he turned around. Are we going to eat? Why doesn't my badge open my office? He rubbed the back of his neck. Access was updated during your absence. Carl's badge works. His hand dropped. You questioned Carl? I asked why I couldn't enter my own office. You put him in a bad position. You put him there first. Travis pulled out the chair across from me. He sat without touching the food. Megan, there are security procedures. What security procedure blocks the COO from an empty office? You're not currently active. I requested re-employment, and I offered you a position. You offered me a waiver. He stared at the table. I waited. When we first married, I thought his silences meant he was considering what I said. It took me years to understand that sometimes he was only waiting for me to become uncomfortable. I usually did. I would explain more. I would soften the question. I would give him a better answer to use. That night, I kept quiet. He looked up first. The company changed while you were gone. I expected it to change. No, you expected it to wait for you. I expected my position to be protected. There you go again. Again what? Turning our marriage into an employment dispute. I looked at his wedding ring. He twisted it when he was angry, though he claimed he didn't. You made the offer in front of the board because you insisted on formal re-employment. I sent a request. You copied human resources. That's where a return request goes. You could have come to me as your husband. I called you before I sent it. You called me as the COO. He said that like it proved something. I sat back. Which version of me were you willing to answer? He stood and opened one of the containers. Steam rose between us. I'm not fighting about this all night. Then answer one question. He looked over his shoulder. Did you tell the board I chose not to return? I told them you had other priorities. That isn't an answer. You had a medical situation. You had military obligations. The company needed certainty. I gave you a return date. After months of uncertainty, did you tell them I chose not to return? He closed the container harder than necessary. I summarized the circumstances. I got up from the table. Where are you going? He asked. To write down your answer. His expression changed. Seriously? Yes. This is our home. I know. Then stop acting like you're taking a deposition. I walked into the office and closed the door. For a few minutes, I only stood there. The room was small. My desk took up most of one wall. Travis used the bookcase behind me for old tax records and boxes of business cards. A printer sat on a cabinet between us. Even our home office had been built around the company. I unlocked the top drawer and took out a notebook. I wrote the date, the time, and the exact question I had asked. Then I wrote his answer. I summarized the circumstances. Seeing it on paper made it worse. He hadn't denied it. Travis knocked once and came in before I answered. I need you to think about what you're doing, he said. I am. You're recording conversations with your husband. I'm taking notes. That's not normal. Neither was this morning. He leaned against the doorframe. You embarrassed me in front of the board. I stared at him. He seemed surprised by my face. You offered to cut my pay in half, I said. I was trying to keep you involved. You told them I put my personal life ahead of the company. You did. The words came out quickly. For a second, he looked like he wanted to pull them back. I closed the notebook. What personal choice did I make? You could have returned sooner. No, I couldn't. You weren't overseas. That wasn't the condition of my orders. You were in Rhode Island. I was in military duty status. You were recovering, under military medical direction. He pushed away from the frame. You were home some of that time. So you could have helped. I sent updates. Actually helped. You wanted me to work while I was on orders and medically grounded. You answered emails. I answered questions about the handoff. That's work. No, that's continuity. He gave a short laugh. You always have a term for everything. I use the correct term because you keep changing what happened. His jaw tightened. The kitchen timer began beeping. Neither of us had set it. Travis had bumped it while opening the food. He walked out to silence it. I stayed at the desk. A moment later, I heard cabinets opening. Plates touched the counter. He was preparing dinner as if we had reached the end of the conversation. I opened the drawer again. Under my orders was an envelope from the company's first year. I hadn't looked inside it in a long time. It held a copy of the handwritten seating plan from our first client dinner. We couldn't afford an event coordinator, so I had arranged the tables myself. Beside each guest's name, I had written a detail for Travis to remember. Hospital director. Ask about new transport unit. Donor. Husband recovering from surgery. County manager. Prefers no alcohol. At the bottom, in Travis's handwriting, were 4 words. Couldn't do this without you. I sat with the card in my hand. That was what I had wanted from him. Not the title by itself, not praise in front of the board. I wanted him to remember that we had built the company together. Somewhere along the way, I had started treating his memory like something I could earn. If I planned enough, covered enough, and stayed calm enough, he would see me again. Megan, he called. Food's getting cold. I put the seating plan back in the envelope. At the table, he served my curry and passed me the rice. We ate for several minutes without speaking. Then he said, There's a hospital foundation dinner on Friday. I looked up. We already confirmed attendance. Who's we? You and me. You confirmed for me. It was before all this. Before I came home? Yes. I set down my fork. He continued. People know you were mobilized. They'll expect to see you. As what? My wife. The answer landed quietly. Not the COO. Don't do that, I'm asking. It's a social event. for the company, for the foundation, where you'll be introduced as CEO. He rubbed his forehead. Why does everything have to be a test? It didn't used to be. He pushed his plate away. We've spent years presenting ourselves as a team. Were we? Of course we were. Then why am I only your wife on Friday? He looked toward the window over the sink. Outside, the reflection showed both of us at the table. From a distance, we probably looked like we always had. He lowered his voice. We don't need people speculating about our marriage. I thought this was an employment issue. It affects both. Only when you need it to. He didn't answer. I picked up my plate and carried it to the sink. Behind me, he said, You know how rumors work in this industry? Yes. Then come with me. We'll smile, speak to people, and deal with the company privately. You already dealt with it publicly. The board is not the public. You made your statement in a room full of people whose opinion controls my work. He stood. So you want everyone to know we're having problems? I turned off the faucet. There it was. He wasn't asking whether I was hurt. He was asking whether anyone else would notice. For years, I had helped protect that version of us. At company dinners, I finished stories when he forgot details. When he arrived late, I told people he had been on a client call. When he took credit for an operational change I designed, I let it pass because correcting him would make us look divided. I had called that loyalty. Now I could see the price of it. Travis had learned that I would absorb the private loss to preserve the public picture. I haven't decided about Friday, I said. His shoulders dropped slightly. He heard possibility. That bothered me more than his anger. The next morning, I woke before him. I made coffee and carried it into the office. There was one more place I could check without entering the company system. I opened the shared calendar tied to our household account. Travis used it for travel because I had always managed our schedules. Most of the company entries had been removed during my mobilization. One remained. It was the board preparation dinner from the previous week. The notes section listed 3 items: leadership permanence, Megan transition language, foundation dinner optics. I read the last line twice. Then I printed the calendar entry. The printer woke with a mechanical click. Travis appeared in the doorway before the page finished sliding out. "What are you printing?" he asked. I took the sheet from the tray. Something from our shared calendar. He looked at the paper, then at me. I folded it and placed it beside my return request. For once, I didn't explain what I had found. He stayed in the doorway while I locked the drawer. "You're going through my calendar now?" "Our calendar." That entry was for my meeting. It had my name in it. He stepped into the room. "You're looking for reasons to be offended. I found a plan to manage me. It was a list of discussion points. What does Megan transition language mean?" He looked toward the desk. "You have the page. Why don't you tell me?" "I'm asking the person who wrote it." "I didn't write those notes." "Who did?" "I don't remember." It was barely 6 in the morning. Travis was wearing running shorts and one sock. He hadn't even found the rest of his clothes, but he had already found a way not to answer. I picked up my coffee. "Are you coming Friday?" he asked. "I haven't decided. I need an answer today." "Why?" "Because seating is being finalized." "Then tell them not to hold my seat." He stared at me. "You're really going to do this?" "Do what?" "Make a public statement. I'm declining dinner. You know what people will think." I took my coffee into the bedroom and closed the door. After he left for work, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop. I opened a blank email and addressed it to Dana Ellis, our human resources manager. I had hired Dana 4 years earlier. We weren't friends. That was useful. She understood records, deadlines, and the danger of casual wording. I wrote 1 paragraph. I returned from active duty service and submitted my written request for re-employment. Please confirm my current job title, employment status, pay status, office access, and the date each was changed. Please also identify who authorized those changes. I attached my orders and return request. Before sending it, I read every line twice. There was no accusation, No mention of the board meeting. No mention of Travis. I pressed send. That was my first deliberate move. Until then, I had been asking my husband to explain himself. Now I was asking the company to state what it had done. Dana replied 11 minutes later. Received. I need to review this with leadership. I wrote back, thank you. Please respond in writing. Then I waited. At noon, Travis called. Why did you email Dana? Because she handles employment records. You could have asked me. I did. You know she has to escalate anything involving an executive. I assumed she would. He was quiet for a moment. I could hear a printer running behind him. What exactly are you trying to accomplish? He asked. I want an accurate answer. To what? My status. I gave you an offer. That wasn't my status. It becomes your status if you accept it. And if I don't? His voice changed. Then we have a more difficult conversation. We're having it now. No, you're creating a record. I looked at the locked desk across the room. Yes, I said. He hung up. Dana's answer arrived shortly before 3. It was careful. Company records currently reflect that you are inactive following personal leave. Your executive access was suspended during the leadership transition. Compensation status remains under review. These actions were authorized by the Chief Executive Officer. Human Resources has not received a resignation from you. I read the final sentence again. She had answered more than I asked. No resignation. That mattered because the board deck described me as if I had stepped away by choice. The company's own human resources manager had just confirmed there was no resignation in my file. I printed the email and locked it away. The action had worked. It also showed me the problem was wider than a bad presentation. My employment record had already been changed. My access had already been suspended. My pay was being considered as if my position were optional. I called Dana. She answered quietly, Hi, Megan. Thank you for the response. You're welcome. What does compensation status remains under review mean? I can't interpret leadership's decision. I'm not asking you to interpret it. Is payroll active? There was a pause. As of today, yes. As of the next pay date, I can't confirm that. When can you? You should speak with Travis. I have. Another pause. Dana lowered her voice. There's an executive instruction pending. What kind of instruction? I've given you what I can in writing. Does it depend on whether I sign the consulting agreement? She didn't answer. I could hear typing. Dana. I'm sorry, Megan. I have to go. The call ended. I wrote down the time. Then I opened my bank account and checked the last direct deposit. It was there. The next one was due the following week. Our household depended more on my pay than people assumed. Travis earned more, but much of his money stayed tied to the company. My salary covered the mortgage, utilities, groceries, and the automatic payments we rarely discussed. I had arranged it that way. In the early years, when Harbor Air missed revenue projections, I told him, leave the company cash alone. I'll carry the house this month. 1 month became a pattern. Even after the company stabilized, the bills kept coming from my account. Travis paid for larger things when they arose. A roof repair, a new furnace, trips we took together. The ordinary expenses were mine. I opened our household spreadsheet. The mortgage would clear after the next pay date. So would the property tax transfer. If Travis stopped my pay, he wouldn't only be cutting off an employee, he would be removing the money that kept our shared home running, then leaving me responsible for explaining the missing payments. I called him again. He answered this time. What? Is my next paycheck being held? You talked to Dana. She told me to talk to you. I'm in the middle of something. It requires 1 word. He sighed. Payroll is under review. Because I refused the offer? Because you're not performing work. I'm ready to perform work. We don't have a COO opening. You're saying my position no longer exists? I'm saying the structure changed. Who has my duties? I'm not discussing personnel details. I wrote that down. He heard my pen. Are you taking notes again? Yes. This is unbelievable. Will my paycheck be issued? I haven't decided. You don't decide payroll based on whether your wife cooperates. Stop combining the marriage with the company. You called me your wife when you wanted me at dinner. That was a personal invitation. From the company CEO, he lowered his voice. Come Friday, we'll talk afterward. So the paycheck depends on dinner too? I didn't say that. You put both in the same sentence. I have to go. He ended the call. I remained at the table with the household spreadsheet open. For years, I had believed my civilian position was part of the marriage, not a gift from Travis. Not exactly. I had earned it. Still, I had treated the company and our home as one structure. I had assumed protecting one protected the other. Now Travis was separating them whenever it gave him control. At work, I was only his absent employee. At the dinner, I was only his wife. At home, I was supposed to be both, as long as neither version asked him a hard question. I closed the spreadsheet and called the hospital foundation. A woman named Paula answered. I gave her my name and asked about Friday's event. Yes, Mrs. Hudson, she said. We have you seated with Mr. Hudson. What title do you have for me? She clicked through something on her computer. It says Harbor Air Response. What role? There was a brief silence. It says spouse of founder. I looked at the wall. Was that on the original response? Let me check. I heard more clicking. No. The original said Chief Operating Officer. When was it changed? 2 days ago. Who changed it? The update came from your company. Do you have a name? I have an email address for the executive office. That didn't tell me whether Travis had done it himself. Paula sounded uncomfortable. Would you like me to change it back? I almost said yes. Then I stopped. If I asked her to correct the title, I would be fighting over a place card while my employment record still called me inactive. Travis could change it again, or he could accuse me of misrepresenting my current role. Please remove the title completely, I said. Just your name. Yes. And will you still attend? I looked at the printed calendar entry on my desk. Foundation Dinner Optics. Yes, I said. I'll attend. After we hung up, I sent Travis a message. I'll be at the dinner. I'll drive separately. He responded almost immediately. That defeats the purpose. I didn't answer. Friday evening, I wore a dark blue suit and a plain white blouse. I left my uniform in the closet. This was a civilian event, and I wasn't going to let Travis use my rank as decoration while dismissing the orders that came with it. The dinner was held at a hotel near Providence. By the time I arrived, the reception area was crowded. People stood in small groups holding wine glasses and folded programs. Travis was near the entrance speaking with 2 hospital executives. He saw me before I reached him. His smile appeared instantly. There she is, he said. He kissed my cheek. I let him. One of the executives smiled. Welcome home. Thank you. Travis said you were finally taking some time for yourself. I looked at Travis. He kept smiling. Megan has trouble slowing down. I wasn't taking time for myself, I said. I was on military duty. The executive's smile became uncertain. Of course. And medically directed convalescence, I added. Travis touched my elbow. Can I borrow you? Excuse us, I said. He guided me several feet away, then removed his hand. What are you doing? Answering him. You made it awkward. He had the wrong information. This is exactly why I wanted us to arrive together. So you could brief me. So we could be consistent. Consistent with what? He looked toward the people behind me. Not here. You brought me here. A server passed with a tray. Travis waited until she moved away. You agreed to come. I didn't agree to lie. Nobody asked you to lie. You told him I was taking time for myself. It was polite conversation. It was false. His mouth tightened. Can you get through one evening without correcting everyone? I don't know. How many people did you tell? He walked away before answering. I stayed. That was new for me. Normally, I would have followed him. I would have lowered my voice and repaired the moment before anyone noticed. Instead, I went to the registration table. My place card showed only my name. Paula had made the change. A hospital transport director named Sam approached while I was checking the table list. We had worked together on several flight agreements. I didn't expect to see you, he said. Why not? He hesitated. I heard you were leaving Harbor Air. From whom? Travis mentioned a leadership change. When? Maybe a month ago. That was before my return request. What exactly did he say? Sam shifted his drink to his other hand. That you had different priorities now. I assumed it was mutual. It wasn't. His eyebrows lifted. I could see him deciding whether to ask more. Instead, he said, For what it's worth, the transfer protocol you built saved us last month. What happened? Fog diversion. 2 crews, 3 receiving sites, no missed handoff. Who ran it? Carl's team. I nodded. Good. Your checklist still works. That small sentence steadied me. Travis could block my office. He could change a title. He could not pretend the systems had appeared on their own, at least not to everyone. Sam looked across the room toward him. Should I be concerned about our agreement? He asked. No, the operations team can support it. I answered without thinking. Even then, with my own job in question, I protected the company. Sam thanked me and moved toward the dining room. When I turned around, Travis was watching. He waited until we were seated before speaking. You discussed company business with Sam. He asked about his transport agreement. You're not authorized to represent Harbor Air. I told him the operations team could support the contract. You don't know that. I designed the protocol. You've been gone for months. The people beside us were settling into their chairs. Travis lowered his voice. You can't have it both ways, Megan. You can't reject the role I offered and then walk around acting like you still run things. I didn't reject my role. You rejected the available role. I unfolded my napkin and placed it in my lap. Across the table, someone asked Travis about a new aircraft. His expression changed at once. He smiled and answered smoothly. During dinner, he spoke about resilience, service, and continuity. He thanked military families. He thanked medical teams. He even thanked the people who make difficult sacrifices behind the scenes. He never looked at me. Near the end of the evening, my phone vibrated inside my bag. It was an email from Dana. Leadership has directed that compensation will continue only if revised employment terms are accepted by noon Monday. If no agreement is received, payroll will be changed effective immediately thereafter. I read it once. Then I forwarded it to my personal email and saved a copy. Travis was still speaking to the table. His hand rested beside his untouched water glass. I folded my napkin, placed it beside my plate, and marked noon Monday on my calendar. I left the hotel before Travis finished his last conversation. He called while I was driving north. I let it ring. At a red light, a message appeared on the dashboard screen. You walked out without saying goodbye. I kept both hands on the wheel. 5 minutes later, another message came through. We agreed to present a united front. I hadn't agreed to that. He had said it enough times that he wanted it to feel true. When I reached the house, I parked in the driveway and stayed inside the car. The kitchen light was off. The office window was dark. For the first time, the house didn't feel like a place I was returning to. It felt like another location Travis controlled. I went inside and opened the locked desk. The folder was getting thicker. It held my orders, my return request, the pages from the board meeting, the shared calendar entry, Dana's email about my status, and the payroll deadline. I laid everything out in date order. Then I noticed something I had missed. The consulting agreement required my signature by Monday at noon. Dana's payroll email used the same deadline. The employment offer and the threat to stop my pay weren't separate decisions. They were one decision: sign the waiver or lose the salary that paid our household bills. Travis had called it a way forward. It was pressure. I took pictures of every page and stored them on a small personal drive. Then I put the originals back in the drawer. He arrived home after midnight. I heard his keys hit the bowl near the door. His steps stopped outside the office. You left me there, he said. I turned in the chair. I drove separately. That doesn't answer me. I didn't know I needed permission to leave. He still wore his suit. His tie was loose and his event badge hung from one pocket. People asked where you went. What did you tell them? That you weren't feeling well. Another false explanation. What was I supposed to say? That I went home? He entered the room. You corrected me in front of a hospital executive. He repeated something untrue. You could have handled it privately. You said it publicly. I was being polite. You keep using that word. What word? Polite. You mean convenient. He stared at me. I tapped Dana's email. Did you tell her to stop my pay? I told her compensation depends on active employment. I'm still employed. You're inactive. Because you marked me inactive. You have an offer for a different job. It's work you can do. I can do my job. That position is covered. Temporarily? No. The answer came without hesitation. I looked at him. He had finally said it clearly. You made it permanent. The company needed stability. When? He rubbed his eyes. I'm not doing another interrogation. Before or after I requested to return. It doesn't matter. It matters to me. It was an operational decision. When, Travis? He walked out. I followed him into the kitchen. He opened the refrigerator and stood there without taking anything. You want an exact date so you can use it against me, he said. I want an exact date because it happened to me. He closed the refrigerator. I decided during your absence that we couldn't go back to the old structure. Did you tell anyone I was coming back? You didn't have a confirmed date. Did you tell them I had a legal right to return? His face hardened. You don't get to threaten me in our kitchen. I asked a question. I know what you're doing. I don't think you do. I have lawyers too, Megan. The word too hung between us. I hadn't mentioned a lawyer. He had already thought about one. I went back into the office and locked the door. The next morning, I called my bank. I moved enough from my personal savings to cover one mortgage payment and the utility drafts. It wasn't a large amount. It would keep the house current if my salary disappeared. Then I removed myself from the automatic household transfers after that month. The bank representative asked, would you like to notify the joint account holder? No. I hung up and sat quietly. Separating a household took less than 10 minutes on a banking screen. Understanding that I needed to do it had taken years. Travis slept late. When he came downstairs, I was making toast. Are you working today? I asked. He opened the coffee cabinet. For a few hours. I moved enough money to cover this month's household bills. He turned around. After that, you'll need to cover your share directly, I said. What are you talking about? If my pay is being stopped, I'm not using my savings to maintain everything alone. Our savings. The money came from my personal account. He set a mug on the counter. You're being dramatic. No, I'm telling you before the payments change. So now you're holding the house hostage? I looked at him. You tied my paycheck to a waiver. That is not what happened. It's in writing. His eyes moved toward the office. You've always paid those bills, he said. I know. The answer stopped him. He had expected an argument about fairness. I didn't give him one. I spread butter on the toast. When did you decide that was my responsibility? I asked. We divided expenses years ago. No, I said I'd cover the house while the company was unstable. The company supports both of us. My salary supports the house. You benefit from Harbor Air. I built Harbor Air. His expression flattened. There it is. What? You think nothing exists without you? No, I think my work existed, even when you were the one thanked for it. He picked up his coffee and left the kitchen. That afternoon, I searched for short-term housing. I couldn't sign a long lease. I didn't know what my income would look like after Monday. I found a furnished studio over a dental office near Wickford. It had one narrow bedroom, a small kitchen, and a parking space behind the building. The owner asked why I needed it. Work transition, I said. The phrase sounded strange coming from me. The deposit took a painful amount from my savings. I paid it anyway. The lease ran month to month. I moved one suitcase on Sunday morning while Travis was at the hangar. I packed civilian clothes, toiletries, medication, and my army gear. I left most of the furniture. I left the dishes. I left the framed photographs in the hallway. The locked desk created a problem. I couldn't move it without help, and I didn't want anyone carrying it through the house. I removed the documents and placed them in a locking file case. I also took the small personal drive. Everything fit in the trunk of my car. Before leaving, I set my house key on the kitchen counter. Then I changed my mind. My name was still on the mortgage. My belongings were still inside. Moving into separate housing didn't mean surrendering access. I put the key back on my ring. At the studio, I carried the suitcase upstairs first. The stairs smelled like floor cleaner and someone's lunch. The apartment had beige walls and 2 mismatched lamps. The refrigerator made a clicking sound before the motor started. I placed the locking case in the bedroom closet. Then I sat on the edge of the bed. There was no anger left in me by then, only a list. I needed to refuse the agreement in writing. I needed to confirm whether payroll stopped. I needed someone outside the marriage to look at what the company had done. Travis called around 4. "Where are you?" "At the studio I rented." He didn't speak. I could hear hangar noise behind him. "You moved out?" "For now." "Without discussing it?" "We've been discussing it." "No, we've been fighting about work. You used our marriage when you needed me at the dinner. You told me to forget the marriage when I asked about my job. That doesn't mean you leave. I need a place where my housing isn't part of the pressure. The house is yours too. So is the company I helped build." He made a low sound. "This is about punishing me." "No. It certainly feels like it. I'm not asking you to feel anything. I'm telling you where I am. What are people supposed to think?" I looked around the empty studio. "They don't know where I sleep. They'll find out. Then tell them the truth." He was silent for several seconds. Finally, he said, "Come home. Restore my position. That's not how marriage works. It's not a trade. It's a boundary. You're making them the same thing. You did that when you put the waiver deadline beside my paycheck." He ended the call. On Monday morning, I drove to a small coffee shop near the studio. The apartment's internet kept dropping, and I wanted proof that my email had been sent before noon. At 9:14, I wrote to Dana and copied Travis. I do not accept the consulting agreement or waive any rights. I remain ready and available to return to my civilian employment. My request is for re-employment in the position I would have held if my military service and related convalescence had not interrupted my work. I attached the orders and return request again. Then I added one sentence. "Please correct any record describing my military absence as voluntary personal leave." I read it twice. At 9:21, I sent it. Dana confirmed receipt. Travis did not reply. Noon passed. At 12:16, my company email stopped loading. At 12:23, the employee portal rejected my password. At 1:11, Dana sent a message to my personal account. "Your employment status has been changed to unpaid effective today. Company system access has been disabled. Questions should be directed to the Chief Executive Officer." I called Travis. He declined the call. I sent one message. "Did you authorize the payroll cutoff after receiving my refusal?" He replied 3 minutes later. "You declined available employment." It was the first useful answer he had given me in writing. I saved it. Then I called a Providence attorney whose name had been given to me years earlier during a reserve employment briefing. His assistant found an opening late that afternoon. The office was on the 4th floor of an older building. The elevator shuddered between floors. The attorney's name was Rachel Mercer. She wore reading glasses on a cord and didn't interrupt while I explained the timeline. When I finished, she reviewed the documents in silence. "You knew you had re-employment rights," she said. "Yes." "Why didn't you say that directly at the board meeting?" "I thought the problem was my husband." Rachel removed her glasses. "It may be, but your husband acted through the company." I looked at the payroll email between us. Can he do this? He can make a decision. Whether the decision is lawful is a different question. "What do you need from me?" "Every document you have. Orders, notices, messages, pay records, and the original terms of your position. My appointment records are on the company server. So are the records showing who replaced you and when. I can't access the server now. You shouldn't try." She placed her glasses back on. If we proceed, we'll demand that Harbor Air preserve those records. That means they cannot lawfully delete or alter relevant material once they receive notice. Will that get my job back? Not by itself. What will? A formal reemployment claim, supported by the timeline. I looked through the window at the Providence buildings below. Filing meant the dispute would no longer stay inside our house. Travis would have to answer as CEO. Board members might learn what the company had recorded. Employees might be questioned. There would be no more united front. Rachel slid a blank authorization form across the desk. "You don't have to decide today," she said. "When would you need an answer?" "Soon. Your access is already gone, and payroll has been cut. The longer an inaccurate record sits unchallenged, the more the company will rely on it." I picked up the pen. "What happens first?" "We notify them to preserve the records. Then we file in federal court for reemployment and the remedies that follow from a willful refusal." I signed my name. Rachel gathered the pages into one stack. By the time I walked back to the elevator, Harbor Air was no longer dealing with a wife it expected to quiet down by Monday. It was about to receive a preservation demand from the employee it had locked out. Rachel sent the preservation letter the next morning. It went to Travis, Dana, and the company's outside counsel. The letter identified the records that needed to be kept: my appointment, the handoff, board materials, access changes, payroll instructions, and internal messages about my return. At 10:30, Travis called. "Call this off." I stood beside the studio sink. "No, you filed against Harbor Air. Yes, you didn't even give me a day. I gave you until Monday. That was my deadline." "I know." He lowered his voice. "The board hasn't seen this yet. The board saw the deck. That was an internal employment discussion. So is this. A federal case is public. I didn't make the record false. You are trying to destroy the company. I'm asking to return to work. You could have returned through the consulting role. That wasn't my job. It was a reasonable compromise. It required a waiver. That is standard. Then you should be comfortable defending it." He went quiet. The refrigerator clicked behind me. Finally, he said, "What do you want?" My position restored, my records corrected, my pay reinstated. "That isn't realistic." "It was realistic before I left. You were gone for months. Under orders. We're not doing this again. You called me." He hung up. That afternoon, Rachel filed the reemployment action in federal court. The complaint was plain. It did not discuss our marriage beyond identifying Travis as the person who made the employment decisions. I was grateful for that. I was also embarrassed by my gratitude. Even after he stopped my pay, I was still relieved when strangers didn't see too far inside our house. The company's lawyer responded quickly. All communication about my employment had to go through counsel. I was not to contact staff for company information or enter the hangar without permission. That created a practical problem. My office still held personal property. I had books, a spare pair of shoes, framed photographs, and a green flight jacket I wore during cold mornings on the operations floor. My name was stitched over the left pocket. The company name was on the right. Rachel requested access for me to retrieve those things. Harbor Air offered 1 hour on Thursday morning, supervised by Dana. "Take only personal property," Rachel told me. "Do not log into anything. Do not photograph company materials. If something looks important, tell me afterward. What if they removed records? The preservation demand is in effect. That doesn't answer the question." "No," she said, "it doesn't." Thursday was gray and wet. Water gathered along Airport Street and the hangar doors looked darker than usual. My badge no longer worked at the employee entrance. Dana met me outside with an umbrella. "You could have waited in the car," she said. "I'm fine." She held the door open. "We have to sign you in. I had entered that building thousands of times. That morning, I received a visitor sticker. Dana watched me write my name." "I'm sorry," she said. "For the sticker? For all of it." I looked at her. She glanced toward the security camera above the desk. "We should go upstairs." The operations floor was busy. A weather system had moved over the coast. 2 crews were checking flight conditions while dispatch worked the phones. Carl saw me and lifted one hand. I returned the gesture. Dana moved closer. We're supposed to go directly to the office. We walked past the glass boardroom. The chairs were neatly arranged. There was no sign of the meeting except a faint circle from someone's coffee cup. My office door was open. The nameplate was gone. A temporary label beside the door read, Executive Operations. Inside, someone had cleared the top of my desk. The anniversary photograph had been removed from the low shelf, too. My personal books were stacked in a cardboard box. Dana handed me a sheet. They made an inventory. They? Facilities. Harbor Air didn't have a facilities department. We had one maintenance employee who changed light bulbs when he had time. I read the list. Books, shoes, photographs, outerwear, personal mug. The mug was from my second deployment. It had a crack near the handle and wasn't worth anything. Seeing it listed as property to be removed made my throat tighten. Where's the flight jacket? Closet. I opened the narrow closet beside the window. The jacket hung behind two high-visibility vests. I took it down and folded it over my arm. On the floor was a printed copy of my continuity binder. It was thick, divided by colored tabs. The cover still read, COO Operational Handoff. A new label had been placed over my name. It said, Executive Operations Reference. I didn't touch it. Dana saw what I was looking at. That's company material, she said. I know. She spoke too quickly. I turned toward her. When was my name removed from the office? I don't know. Was it before the board meeting? Megan, I'm asking about the room, not a document. She pressed her lips together. Then a voice came over the operations speaker. Dispatch needs updated coastal alternate contacts. No one answered. The request came again. Carl appeared in the doorway. Sorry, I know you're busy. He looked at me, then at Dana. What is it? Dana asked. The alternate list isn't in the shared folder. It's in the continuity binder, I said. Carl looked toward the floor. Blue tab, I added. Weather diversion. There's a printed backup behind the contact sheet. He picked up the binder and opened it. Found it. A dispatcher called his name from downstairs. Carl started to leave, then stopped. Thank you, he said. Go. He hurried out. Dana watched the doorway. That binder is still current? I asked. Parts of it. Which parts? I can't discuss operations. The company just used it in front of me. She lowered her voice. Please don't put me in this position. I didn't. Her face tightened. I know, she said. We packed the books in silence. The framed photograph from the first anniversary was underneath a stack of industry magazines. I placed it face down in the box. Dana checked each item against the inventory. When we reached the shoes, she said, Your access ticket was submitted the morning of the board meeting. I stopped. She kept looking at the page. What time? Before 8. The meeting had started at 9. My return request had already been sitting with Human Resources for 2 days. Who submitted it? You know who authorized it. Was the reason listed? She shook her head. I can't. Dana, you already wrote that the CEO authorized the change. This is different. How? Counsel told us not to discuss the case with you. I'm collecting my belongings and asking questions. I picked up the box. You volunteered the time, I said. She looked frightened. I softened my voice. I'm not asking for anything else. Footsteps approached from the hall. Travis entered without knocking. He wore shirt sleeves and carried his phone. He looked at the box, then at the jacket over my arm. What happened downstairs? He asked. Dispatch needed an alternate contact list, Dana said. He looked at me. Did you access company material? No, you gave operational direction. I told Carl where to find a printed list. You're not authorized to manage staff. I didn't manage him. You need to leave. Dana checked the wall clock. She has 28 minutes. She's done. I lifted the box. I still have personal photographs in the cabinet. I'll have them sent. I'm here now. He stepped aside, but only enough to make the space between us narrow. I carried the box into the hall and set it down. Then I returned for the photographs. Travis followed. "You couldn't get through 1 hour without interfering," he said. "Your team needed a contact sheet. My team handled it, with my handoff binder. It belongs to the company." "I know." "Then stop acting like its existence proves you own the operation. I never said I owned it. You don't have to." I opened the cabinet. Inside were 4 photographs and a small wooden model helicopter given to us by our first full-time pilot. I placed them in a second box. Travis stood near the door. "You planned well," he said. "Nobody disputes that." "Then why does the board deck say I abandoned the company? It doesn't use that word. It says I became unavailable for family reasons." That was true. I was under orders. You keep hiding behind the orders. I closed the box. The company used my plan while you called my absence personal. We used company material, created by the COO, who was unavailable. Dana looked toward the hallway. I picked up the second box. I'm ready to go. At the visitor desk, I returned the sticker. Carl came over before I reached the door. He held a folded sheet of paper. "Your alternate list was outdated," he said. Travis was several steps behind me. I looked at Carl. "Which contact?" "New Bedford. They changed the after-hours number last month, then update the printed backup and the weather diversion sheet." Carl nodded. Travis said, "Carl." The warning in his voice was clear. Carl folded the paper smaller. "Yes, sir." I looked at him. "You know the process. Use it." He slipped the paper into his pocket and went back to dispatch. Outside, I put the boxes in my trunk. Dana brought the flight jacket under her umbrella. "I can take that," I said. She handed it to me. Rain had darkened the shoulders. "You shouldn't have answered Carl," she said. "He needed a number." "I know." "Then what are you saying?" She glanced toward the hangar doors. "They're documenting everything you do." "Who is they?" "Leadership and council." "Why?" "To show the company can't function with you returning at your old level." I stared at her. "That doesn't make sense." "I'm not saying it does. You just watch them use my continuity binder." "I know." "Does the board know?" "I don't know what the board knows." She stepped back. "I have to go inside." "Dana." She stopped. "Did Human Resources recommend the consulting role?" Her eyes moved to the wet pavement. "No." "Did you recommend cutting payroll?" "No." "Did anyone ask you whether my absence was protected military service?" She shook her head. Then she went inside. I placed the jacket on the passenger seat. The company logo faced up. Rachel called before I left the parking lot. "Harbor Air filed its answer," she said. "What are they claiming? That your former executive position was permanently restructured during your absence. They say the consulting offer was appropriate because it reflected the position available when you returned. My position wasn't former. That is now one of the central disputes. They used my handoff binder 10 minutes ago. Explain." I told her about the alternate contacts, the renamed cover, and Dana's statement about the access ticket. Rachel listened without interrupting. "Did you take any photographs?" "No." "Good." "Good?" "The evidence was right there, and company counsel was watching for you to cross a line. You didn't." I looked through the windshield at the hangar. "What do we do with what I saw?" "We request the original electronic handoff and its revision history. We request the access instruction. We request the records showing what happened to your duties. Will they produce them?" "They'll object first." "And then?" "We narrow the requests and make them answer." I touched the edge of the flight jacket. Rachel continued, "There's another complication. They're saying the company believed your return was uncertain because your time away went beyond the dates Travis expected. My orders and medical status explain that. Your orders explain your duty status. We may need the military record that connects the convalescents to that status." "Heather has it." "Then don't call her yet. Let me review their full position first." I started the car. The immediate question had changed. It was no longer whether Travis had replaced me. Now we had to prove he had kept my work, reassigned my authority, and renamed the arrangement while claiming there was no place for me to return. The first document request went out on Monday. Harbor Air objected to most of it. The company said my requests were too broad, confidential, or unrelated. Rachel narrowed the dates and asked again. The company produced policy manuals and blank forms. None showed what happened to me. Weeks passed that way. Each morning, I opened the studio curtains and checked my account. No salary came in. Rent left on the 1st. The mortgage left 3 days later because Travis still hadn't changed the payment arrangement. I called him. "You need to move the mortgage draft," I said. "I thought you covered this month. I covered last month. The company is paying lawyers because of you. That doesn't pay the mortgage. You chose to rent another place. I chose not to live where my paycheck was leverage." He was silent. Then he said, "You can come home whenever you want. Will you restore my job?" This is exactly the problem. You can't discuss our marriage without attaching a demand. I'm asking whether the pressure has changed. There is no pressure. My pay is still stopped because you refused work. I looked at the account balance on my laptop. "The mortgage needs to come from your account by Friday. I'll handle it." He didn't. The payment failed. It was the first late household payment we'd had in years. The bank added a fee. A notice arrived at the house and appeared in the shared online account. I paid it from my savings. Then I removed the mortgage draft completely. That left less than I wanted to see. Rachel's retainer had already cleared. The studio deposit was gone. I still had enough to live, but not enough to pretend time didn't matter. I began buying groceries with a paper list. I stopped getting coffee near the courthouse. I moved the thermostat down and wore the green flight jacket inside the apartment. The jacket still smelled faintly like hangar dust. One Thursday, Sam called. "I need to ask you something uncomfortable," he said. "Go ahead. Are you still connected to Harbor Air?" "I'm seeking reemployment." "That's not what they're telling partners." "What are they saying?" "That you left executive operations and are challenging the transition." "Who said that?" Travis discussed it during a contract call. I stood beside the studio window. Below me, someone was scraping ice from a windshield. "What did he ask you to do?" "Nothing directly. He said communications should stay with current leadership. That part is appropriate." Sam hesitated. "He also said the company had concerns about you contacting clients." "I haven't contacted any clients. You spoke with me at the foundation dinner. You approached me." "I know." "What did you tell him?" "That we talked about the diversion protocol." "And?" "That was all." I tightened my hand around the phone. "Do you have concerns about me?" I asked. "No." "Then don't get pulled into our dispute. I'm already in it." He brought up our conversation. I closed my eyes. The contact sheet at the hangar had taken less than a minute. Travis was now using it to suggest I had interfered with a client relationship. "Sam, if anyone asks, tell them exactly what happened." "I will." After we hung up, I called Rachel. She listened, then said, "No more conversations with company partners." I didn't call him, I know. Don't answer questions about operations if they call. So Travis can discuss me, but I stay silent. For now. I walked to the small kitchen and opened the refrigerator. There was half a carton of eggs, mustard, and leftover rice. What does "for now" mean? It means we need the internal records. And if they keep refusing, we ask the court to require a proper response. How long? I can't promise. That was the professional cost I hadn't expected. My work still existed. My reputation was being discussed in rooms I couldn't enter. The careful answer was always to wait. I had been good at waiting. That no longer made it easy. Rachel arranged a formal meeting with company counsel. I attended from her conference room. Travis joined from Harbor Air with his lawyer. The screen divided us into 4 boxes. Travis didn't look at me when the meeting began. Rachel asked for the records again. She kept the request narrow. Who held my COO duties? When was that decision made? What did the company tell the board? Why was my pay stopped after I declined the waiver? The company lawyer said, Ms. Hudson's executive functions were absorbed into a revised leadership structure during an extended period of unavailability. Rachel said, we're asking for the documents that show that. Some responsive material contains sensitive operational information. We can use a confidentiality order for production. Travis looked up. She already removed company information from the hangar. I spoke before Rachel could stop me. No, I didn't. You directed an employee to a restricted operations binder. Your dispatcher asked for the alternate contacts. You were there to collect personal property, and I collected personal property. The company lawyer raised a hand. We don't need to litigate that incident today. Rachel looked at him. Then don't use it to avoid production. He stopped speaking. The meeting lasted nearly 2 hours. At the end, Harbor Air agreed to produce records from a limited group of company accounts and the relevant dates. It felt like progress. Then the invoice from Rachel's office arrived. I sat at the studio table looking at the total. The case had consumed more money in 1 month than I usually spent on myself in a year. I paid part of it and called to arrange installments for the rest. Rachel came on the line. "You don't have to speak with me about billing," she said. "I don't want special treatment. It isn't special treatment. I can manage it." Another pause. "Can you?" she asked. I looked at the flight jacket hanging over the chair. "Yes," I said. "For now." The first useful production arrived the following week. Rachel asked me to come to her office. A row of printed emails covered the conference table. Beside them sat my original COO appointment from 2015. I recognized the document immediately. Travis and I had signed it at our kitchen table. The company didn't have an office printer yet, so we used the one now sitting in our home office. The appointment named me Chief Operating Officer. It listed flight operations, dispatch, maintenance coordination, compliance, staffing, vendor control, and emergency planning under my authority. There was no temporary language. Rachel placed my operational handoff beside it. The electronic record showed when I created it, when I updated it, and who received it. Each department assignment was labeled temporary. At the bottom, I had written, "Authority returns to COO upon completion of military absence and confirmed availability." Travis had replied to the message, "Received. Will keep the seat warm." I read that line 3 times. Rachel watched me. "He knew the plan," I said. "Yes." He acknowledged it. "Yes." She moved to the next document. It was an instruction from Travis to Dana and the department heads. He sent it while I was still on orders. Effective immediately, COO approvals will route through the CEO. Department leads should treat this structure as permanent for planning purposes. Do not hold decisions for Megan's anticipated return. The date was several weeks before I submitted my formal return request. I looked at Rachel. He decided before he knew when I was coming back. That's what this shows. The next message was sent after my request arrived. Travis directed Dana to suspend my executive access and prepare consulting terms. The subject line read, "Megan replacement structure." There was no discussion of whether I could resume the role, no evaluation, no question to human resources, only instructions. Rachel turned over another page. It was the board deck. The first saved version described me as absent for active duty military service with a medically directed extension. The later version removed those words. In their place, it said voluntary personal leave and family priorities. The revision history identified Travis's account. He hadn't misunderstood my status. He had edited it. My hands went cold. Rachel gave me time, but I didn't need time. I needed the next page. The payroll instruction was short. If Megan declines the consulting agreement and waiver, change her to unpaid status at noon. Disable remaining access immediately. Direct questions to me. Dana had replied, "Please confirm whether military reemployment requirements have been reviewed." Travis answered, "This is an executive restructuring decision. Proceed." I sat back. There it was. Not one bad meeting. Not one careless phrase. A sequence. He accepted the handoff. He made the replacement permanent during my absence. He changed the board language after I requested return. Then he tied my pay to the waiver. Every smaller inconsistency belonged to the same decision. Rachel folded her hands. "This is strong." I looked at the original appointment again. Strong enough to restore me? It supports that remedy. I expected relief. Instead, I pictured walking back into the hangar while the board deck still sat in company records. I pictured Travis introducing me as his wife at another dinner. I pictured staff being told I had challenged a transition I supposedly chose. Getting the office back would not correct any of that by itself. Rachel's assistant knocked and handed her a message. Rachel read it. Harbor Air wants to discuss settlement. How much? They haven't made a formal number yet. What do they want? Confidentiality, dismissal of the case, no admission, no requirement to restore you as COO. I looked down at the replacement directive. An hour later, Travis and his lawyer joined another call. His lawyer did most of the talking. The company would make a payment. The amount would account for lost compensation and part of my legal costs. My personnel file would state that I left by mutual agreement. I would agree not to discuss the dispute, the board materials, or the internal communications. When he finished, Travis finally looked at me. This gives us a chance to handle the marriage without the company hanging over it, he said. I kept my voice even. The company is hanging over it because you put it there. We can fix things privately. Which things? Our relationship. What about my record? You'd have a neutral departure. I didn't depart. His lawyer said the language is negotiable. I looked at Rachel. Does the board deck get corrected? The lawyer answered, internal historical materials would remain confidential. So no. We're offering a practical resolution. I turned to Travis. Would the staff be told I didn't abandon the role? He rubbed his jaw. Why does that matter if you're paid? Would they? No company sends announcements about private settlements. I nodded once. Before the production, I had wanted my job back quietly. I thought restoration would put everything where it belonged. I thought I could return to the office, repair the marriage later, and let the false story fade. The documents changed that. A quiet payment would protect the person who wrote the lie. A neutral departure would make me participate in it. Rachel muted the call. You don't have to answer now, she said. Yes, I do. You're under financial pressure. I know. If this continues, it will cost more. Trial is public. So are many filings. I know. She studied my face. What do you want now? I looked at the altered board deck. I want the record corrected where he changed it. That may require a judgment or a settlement with specific corrective terms. Then payment alone isn't enough. Rachel unmuted the call. I faced the screen. I reject the confidentiality agreement and the neutral departure, I said. I'm not selling them a clean version of what they did. Travis leaned toward his camera. Megan, think carefully. I am. You may get less than you're being offered. Then I get less. His face went still. I placed my hand on the original COO appointment. I'm not asking for a private exit anymore. I want an accurate public record, and I'm willing to stay in the case until there is one. Rachel ended the call before Travis could answer. Then she turned the printed documents toward me. If the record is the goal, we need to define exactly which record. The board deck, that's one. My personnel file, good. My title, pay history, access history, and the reason listed for my absence. She wrote each item on a legal pad. What about public statements, she asked. I'm not asking the court to monitor every conversation. That's sensible. I want the company's official records to tell the truth. And restoration? Yes. Still COO? Yes. She nodded. Then we stop arguing about whether the consulting offer was kind or practical. We show that your COO position continued to exist. How? By following the work. I looked at the original appointment. The title itself was only 2 words. The duties filled an entire page. Rachel tapped the list. If these functions remained, somebody performed them. Travis spread them among department leads. Then we identify each function and where it went. That was work, I understood. I took copies back to the studio. I cleared the small table and began building a chart. The first column listed every duty from my appointment. The second listed the temporary assignment in my handoff. The third listed what I had seen or learned after returning. Flight approvals had gone to Travis. Dispatch supervision remained with Carl's team. Maintenance coordination was split between a department lead and Travis. Vendor control had moved to the executive office. Emergency planning still relied on my continuity binder. I didn't guess where I lacked information. I marked those rows unknown. By midnight, I had 7 pages. The next morning, I sent them to Rachel. She called 10 minutes later. This is useful. It's incomplete. That's why it's useful. It shows us what to request. She used the chart to demand current organizational records, duty assignments, approval routes, and communications about the restructuring. This time, the company couldn't answer with blank policies. Each request pointed to a specific function. The responses arrived in pieces. An approval chart showed Travis had taken my final authority. A staffing memo showed department leads had absorbed additional tasks but kept the same reporting lines. A current emergency checklist matched the one in my handoff. The company had changed names and routing. It had not removed the work. Rachel called me into her office again. She placed the old and new charts side by side. "This is the escalator issue," she said. I knew the term from reserve briefings. The point was simple. I was supposed to return to the position I would have held if military service had not interrupted my civilian career. The company couldn't push me down the stairs because I had left under orders. I ran my finger along the 2 charts. They'll say the structure changed for business reasons. They already do. How do we show it didn't? We don't need to show nothing changed. We show what the changes actually did. They moved my authority to Travis and offered you lower paid work without that authority. I nodded. Rachel pulled another page from the file. "We're taking Dana's deposition." I looked up. "She's afraid. That doesn't make her testimony optional. She helped me. She answered accurate questions. I don't want her punished. Then we keep the questions narrow and factual. We don't ask her to choose sides. That sounded reasonable in the office. It felt different when I saw Dana enter the conference room 2 weeks later. She wore a gray jacket and carried a company laptop bag. Harbor Air's lawyer sat beside her. Dana looked at me once, then took her seat. A court reporter prepared the recording equipment. Rachel explained that Dana was under oath. The company lawyer reminded everyone that confidential business material should be handled carefully. Dana gave her name and position. Rachel began with routine questions. Who maintained employee records? Dana did. Who processed status changes? Dana did after receiving authorization. Who could authorize executive access changes? Travis. Rachel placed my chart in front of her. Do these duties match the duties assigned to Megan Hudson as Chief Operating Officer? Dana read the first page. Generally. The company lawyer said, "If you don't know, say you don't know." Dana nodded. Rachel moved 1 row at a time. Flight approvals. Yes. Dispatch supervision. Yes. Maintenance coordination. Yes. Vendor control. Yes. Emergency planning. Yes. Were these functions discontinued during Ms. Hudson's military absence? No. Were they transferred outside Harbor Air? No. Were they assigned to a newly hired Chief Operating Officer? No. Who held final approval authority when Ms. Hudson requested re-employment? The Chief Executive Officer. Travis Hudson? Yes. Rachel placed the consulting agreement in front of her. Did the proposed role include final approval authority? No. Did it include supervision of department heads? No. Did it include executive access? Limited access? Did it pay the same salary? No. Did Human Resources conduct a comparison between the consulting role and the COO position? Dana glanced at the company lawyer. He said, "You may answer if you know." No. Did Human Resources recommend the consulting role? No. Who directed that it be offered? Travis. Rachel didn't react. I kept my hands folded in my lap. The questions moved to my absent status. Dana confirmed she received my orders. She confirmed I had sent a written return request. She confirmed there was no resignation. Then Rachel placed both versions of the board deck on the table. What description appeared in the earlier version? Dana read it. Active duty military service with medically directed extension. What appeared in the circulated version? Voluntary personal leave and family priorities. Did Human Resources request that change? No. Did you believe voluntary personal leave was accurate? The company lawyer interrupted. That calls for a legal conclusion. Rachel said, I asked about her understanding as the records manager. Dana looked down at the page. No, she said. The room became very quiet. Rachel waited before asking the next question. Why not? Because we had military orders in the file. Did you also have a resignation? No. Did you have a request from Ms. Hudson to change her absence to personal leave? No. Did you have a request from her to step down as COO? No. The company lawyer leaned toward Dana and whispered something. The court reporter reminded them that private conversations could not occur while a question was pending. Rachel placed the payroll email on the table. Did you ask whether military re-employment requirements had been reviewed? Yes. Why? Because the payroll cutoff followed her request to return. Did you receive an analysis? No. What did you receive? An instruction to proceed. From whom? Travis. The answer was calm. That made it stronger. Rachel finished shortly afterward. Harbor Air's lawyer asked questions about the company's growth and changing needs. Dana agreed that operations had expanded. She agreed that Travis had taken more direct control during my absence. Then he asked, did Ms. Hudson perform civilian COO work while on military leave? Not that I know of. Was the company required to keep executive decisions pending for her? I don't know. Did Harbor Air continue operating? Yes, successfully. Dana hesitated. Yes. He looked satisfied. That was their argument. The company survived without me, so they wanted survival itself to justify keeping me out. When the deposition ended, Dana packed her laptop. I waited near the door. She approached slowly. I'm sorry you had to do that, I said. She looked at the company lawyer across the room. Then she said, I told the truth. I know. Her eyes were tired. They'll know I spoke to you in the parking lot. Rachel didn't ask about that. She didn't need to. I won't bring you into anything that isn't necessary. Dana adjusted the strap on her bag. It's already necessary, she said. Then she left. Outside the building, Rachel handed me a copy of the duty chart with her notes. That went well. It cost Dana. It exposed Dana to questions. Travis's decisions created the cost. I looked down the street. What happens to her now? We watch. If the company takes action against a witness, that creates another problem for them. I don't want another problem. Neither do I. The deposition produced one visible result. Harbor Air withdrew the statement that my COO functions had been eliminated. The company filed a revised response saying the functions had been redistributed during my absence and that reinstating me would disrupt the current leadership structure. They had moved from claiming the job disappeared to admitting the work remained. Rachel called that important. I did too. It was also the first time I understood how each useful fact narrowed Travis's choices. When one explanation failed, he needed another. That evening, he came to the studio. I saw him through the window before he knocked. He held a stack of mail from the house. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. You still get things there, he said. I changed my address. These came before. I took the envelopes. Thank you. He looked past me at the room. The green flight jacket hung on the back of a chair. You're really living like this. It's temporary. You have a house. So do you. He rubbed his hands together against the cold. Dana was questioned for hours. Less than 2. She's upset. So am I. You're dragging employees into our marriage. The questions were about company records. She's worried about her job. Is her job at risk? That's not what I said. Then don't use her fear to pressure me. He looked down the street. You got what you wanted, he said. The company admitted the duties still exist. I want correction and restoration. You know I can't put you back over people who've reported to me for months. You can. You don't want to. It would create chaos. The handoff tells you how authority returns. That document was written before everything changed. The work didn't change. His face tightened. He had seen the same comparison I had. I no longer needed him to admit it at my door. Have your lawyer speak to Rachel? I said. Megan, I'm not discussing the case here. I'm trying to discuss us. Then don't mention Dana, the deposition, or my position. He opened his mouth, then stopped. Without the company, he had nothing prepared. I closed the door. The next morning, Rachel forwarded a new demand from Harbor Air. The company wanted complete proof for the period beyond my original expected return date. It questioned whether the military had recognized any medical need for my continued absence and whether my convalescence truly remained connected to official duty. The strategy had worked. We had shown that my job survived. Now Travis's lawyers had chosen the part of my service record they thought they could break. The demand asked for every medical record connected to my convalescence, not only the certification. They wanted examination notes, treatment details, medication lists, and communications with military medical staff. Rachel read the request over the phone. "They're entitled to information relevant to your duty status," she said. "They are not automatically entitled to your entire medical history. Then we give them the status record. We'll offer a limited release." What are they claiming now? That your original mobilization period ended before you asked to return to Harbor Air. They say the time after that was personal maternity recovery, not protected service. I remained in official duty status. I know. They have my orders. They're saying the orders don't establish the medical extension. I stood at the studio table. My orders were spread in front of me. Travis knew Heather grounded me. "Did you give him her certification?" "No. It was in the clinic system." "Did you tell him you remained in duty status?" "More than once." "Then we need the record that confirms it." Harbor Air did not wait for that record. The company filed a public motion describing me as an executive who stayed away after her expected military return date for personal maternity reasons. It said I had failed to provide adequate proof that the military required the continued absence. They attached the consulting agreement and called it a good faith attempt to accommodate me. They did not attach the waiver page. Rachel called as soon as the filing appeared. "They removed the last page," I said. "They attached selected pages. The signature line is on the last page. So is the waiver. Can they do that?" "We'll file the complete agreement." I read the company's description again. Personal maternity reasons. The same idea from the altered board deck was now on the federal docket. "What happens if we don't produce the medical record?" I asked. "They'll argue you can't connect the disputed period to military service. And if we do, they'll examine it closely." "How closely?" "They may question your medical officer. They may challenge dates, wording, and whether the restriction prevented civilian work." I sat down. "I wasn't cleared to resume aviation duties. Your civilian job was executive operations, not flying. I worked inside an aviation response company. My duties involved flight decisions." That's our answer. "But they're going to say you could have performed some civilian work. Travis asked me to help while I was on orders." "Is that in writing?" "No." "Then stay with what we can prove." That phrase followed me all day. What we could prove. I had spent months telling the truth. Travis had spent those same months deciding which parts required proof. By evening, the complete consulting agreement had been filed. Rachel also filed my mobilization orders and the return request showing the date I told Harbor Air I was ready and available. That corrected part of the public picture. It also put my service dates, my home address from the original paperwork, and my signature into a case strangers could search. Rachel had the address redacted quickly. The first version had already been available for several hours. The next morning, an envelope appeared under the studio door. It contained a printed copy of the court filing. Across the first page, someone had written, "Thought you should know this is circulating." There was no name. I carried it downstairs to the dental office. The receptionist looked at the handwriting and shook her head. "It wasn't us." "Did you see who left it?" "No." I went back upstairs. I didn't know whether it came from someone at Harbor Air, someone in the aviation community, or someone who simply knew where I lived. That was the loss I couldn't measure. The dispute had reached my temporary home. I called Rachel. She asked me to photograph the envelope and keep it. "Do you feel unsafe?" she asked. "No." "Are you sure?" "I feel exposed." That isn't the same thing. Don't answer anyone who contacts you about the filing. I placed the envelope in the locking case. Then I called the building owner and asked if I could move to the rear apartment when it became available. It cost more, but its door wasn't visible from the street. He said it might open the following month. I agreed to take it. Travis called that afternoon. "Did you see what your lawyers filed?" he asked. "What part?" "Your orders are public. Your lawyer challenged them. You could have provided them privately." "I did. I sent them with my return request. That isn't what I mean." "What do you mean?" "You're turning private matters into exhibits. The company filed first. I told counsel I didn't want medical details out there. Then why are you demanding them? We need to defend the business. From the fact that I remained in duty status? From a claim based on an absence we couldn't verify. You could have asked me." "I did ask. You asked how long I would be gone. You never asked for certification. You expected me to accept whatever timeline you gave me. The timeline came from military medical staff. I had a company to run. I looked at the anonymous envelope on my table. You had the board deck changed," I said. He lowered his voice. "We're past that." "No. We're finally looking at it. You think this case is going to give you back your dignity?" The sentence was so personal that I stopped breathing for a moment. Then he continued, "It won't. It's going to put every private detail in front of the board, employees and clients. You're the one using my recovery as a defense. I'm warning you what litigation does. Is that concern or pressure? Does it matter if I'm right?" "Yes." He exhaled slowly. "Take the settlement. We can revise the amount. Will you correct the records? We can agree on neutral wording." "No. You're choosing public embarrassment. You already chose it for me." He ended the call. That night, I opened the household photo folder on my laptop. I found a picture from the day Harbor Air signed its first hospital contract. Travis and I stood outside the hangar. He had one arm around me. I was holding the contract folder against my chest. The next photograph showed us at dinner. Travis was lifting a glass. In the short video attached to it, he said, "None of this happens without Megan." I watched it twice. Then I closed the folder. The marriage had not been false from the beginning. That would have been easier. We had loved each other. We had trusted each other. We had worked well together. The problem was that Travis still believed those earlier years gave him the right to decide how much of me counted now. I had been leaving room for him to come back to who he was. His court filing showed me what he was willing to do instead. The following day, Rachel sent Harbor Air a limited authorization. It permitted release of records showing my duty status, flight restriction, convalescent period, and clearance timeline. The company refused. They wanted the underlying examination notes, too. Rachel filed an objection. "They're trying to force a choice," she told me. "Either you disclose more than necessary, or they argue you're hiding the basis for your absence. What would you recommend?" "Start with Heather's certification and testimony about what the military record means. I haven't spoken to her since I was cleared. Call her. Tell her there is litigation. Don't coach her and don't ask what she'll say. Ask how to obtain a certified record." I called the clinic. Heather returned my call near the end of the day. "Megan," she said, "is everything all right? My civilian employer is challenging the convalescent period." "What do you mean, challenging it?" "They're saying it may have been personal leave rather than military duty." She was silent. Then she said, "You were in active duty status." "I know. The grounding was entered in your military record." "I know. And the convalescent certification was entered under my authority." "I know." Her voice sharpened. "Then what are they confused about?" "I don't think they're confused." That answer changed the call. Heather asked for Rachel's contact information. She told me the clinic could process a certified release if I completed the correct authorization. "Are they asking for your full record?" she asked. "Yes. That is not necessary to establish duty status." That's what Rachel said. What do they actually need? The grounding, the convalescent certification, the dates, and someone who can explain why I couldn't simply return because Travis wanted me to. Heather paused. "Send your lawyer my number." After we hung up, I called Rachel. She contacted Heather the next morning. Before discussing testimony, Rachel sent her the relevant pleadings and the produced company records under a secure release I authorized. That included the payroll instruction. Heather called me during lunch. "He stopped your pay at noon?" "Yes." "After you refused a lower position?" "Yes." "I didn't know that. You only knew the medical side. I knew you were worried about the company." "I was." Heather's voice softened. "You kept asking when you could go back. I remember. You asked during an examination. I remember that, too. And I told you the restriction wasn't optional." "Yes." There was a pause. "Megan, I can authenticate what I entered. I can explain your status. I cannot promise what a court will do with it. I'm not asking you to." "Good." After the call, Rachel explained the next decision. If Heather became a witness, Harbor Air would receive her name in the formal disclosure. Travis would then know the flight surgeon who treated me was prepared to speak. The company could question her under oath. It could examine the limited medical records. It could argue that my restriction applied only to military aviation and not to civilian executive work. There was no way to use the certification halfway. Either I relied on the official record and accepted scrutiny, or I let Travis's version remain unanswered. Rachel asked, "Do you want me to prepare the witness disclosure?" I looked at the green flight jacket hanging beside the window. "Yes. You understand this makes settlement without a record correction less likely?" "Yes." "You understand some medical facts will be discussed in open court if we go to trial?" "Yes." She waited. I said it again. Rachel served the witness disclosure that afternoon. Heather's name appeared beneath the words, "Treating Military Medical Officer and Flight Surgeon." Travis called before dinner. "You're bringing Heather into this?" I set my fork down. "She entered the certification." "I know who she is." "Then why did the company claim the military didn't recognize my recovery? I didn't write the motion. Your lawyer filed it for your company. You could have provided a form. I provided my orders and return request, not the medical paperwork. You never asked for it before replacing me." He breathed into the phone. "This is getting out of control," he said. "It's moving toward trial. Do you want a doctor discussing your maternity recovery in open court?" "No. Then don't do this. You challenged it." Counsel raised a proof issue. The proof issue is Heather's record. There has to be another way. There was. You could have accepted the status when I told you. He lowered his voice. "You're willing to humiliate both of us." "I'm willing to prove what happened." "You think there's a difference?" "Yes." He ended the call. The company scheduled Heather's deposition for the following week. I did not attend in person. Rachel said there was no reason for me to sit through questions about my own medical history. I joined by secure video from her office and kept my camera off. Heather wore her uniform. She sat in a military conference room with a plain wall behind her. Her medical record system was not visible. The company lawyer began with her qualifications. Heather answered without adding anything. "Did you personally examine Megan Hudson?" "Yes." "Did Lieutenant Colonel Hudson request to be removed from aviation duties?" "No." "Who made that decision?" "I did." "Based on information she gave you?" "Based on my examination, the clinical findings, and applicable military medical standards." "Was she hospitalized?" Rachel objected. "That exceeds the limited medical authorization." The question was withdrawn. The lawyer tried another route. Did the flight grounding prevent her from reading email? Heather looked at him. "That is not how a flight restriction works. Could she physically read email?" Rachel objected again. Heather waited. The lawyer said, "Let me rephrase. Did you issue an order prohibiting all civilian work?" "No. I entered a military medical restriction and later certified convalescence while she remained in active duty status. So you did not evaluate whether she could serve as a civilian chief operating officer?" "No." "Then you cannot say Harbor Air was required to hold that position. That is not a medical question." He paused. I could hear paper moving on his desk. "Did Lieutenant Colonel Hudson remain a soldier during the convalescent period?" "Yes." "Was she on vacation?" "No." "Was the convalescence optional?" "No." "Could she have ended it early if she felt capable?" "Not on her own authority." "Could she have asked?" She asked when she could return. My hand tightened around a pen. The lawyer looked up. Return to military aviation. Return to her ordinary responsibilities. She discussed both military and civilian concerns. Did you tell her not to communicate with Harbor Air? No. Did she tell you she answered company questions? Yes. Did you discipline her for that? No. He leaned back. So she was capable of performing some company tasks. Heather's expression did not change. She was capable of answering limited questions. That does not convert military convalescence into personal leave. The lawyer looked down at his notes. Rachel asked only a few questions when it was her turn. Who held authority to ground Megan? I did, as her flight surgeon. Who entered the convalescent certification? I did. Where was it entered? In her active duty medical record. What was her duty status during the certified period? Active duty. Did she choose that status for convenience? No. Did she timely comply with the medical restriction? Yes. Was she released to return before she made her civilian reemployment request? Yes. Heather opened the certified timeline. The clearance date came first. My written request followed promptly. There was no missing period. Rachel placed the mobilization orders, medical status certification, and return request together. 3 records. 1 continuous sequence. That removed the uncertainty Harbor Air had created. After the deposition, the company agreed that my military service and certified convalescence were protected. It also agreed that my return request was timely. The filing was only 1 page. I printed it anyway. Their new position was narrower. They still denied I was entitled to return as COO. They still claimed the consulting role satisfied their obligation. They still denied that cutting my pay was willful. But they could no longer call my convalescence voluntary personal leave while arguing about the law. Rachel added the filing to our trial binder. The dispute is clean now, she said. Clean isn't the word I'd use. She smiled briefly. Legally clean. The court has 3 main questions. What position should you have returned to? Did Harbor Air refuse it? Was the refusal willful? And if we prove those, the court can restore the proper position, correct records, and award lost pay. If the violation was willful, the court can award an equal amount in liquidated damages. I knew the rule. Hearing it applied to my own case felt different. The remedy was not based on owning more of the company than Travis. I didn't. It wasn't based on the board liking me. I had no reason to assume it did. It wasn't based on my rank giving me authority over civilians. It didn't. The leverage was the position I should have occupied if protected service had not interrupted my work. That position was COO. The company's own records showed it. 2 days later, Sam asked to meet for coffee. Rachel approved the conversation because he had contacted me personally and was not represented in the case. We met near the airport. Sam chose a table against the wall. I saw the new filing, he said. It's public. People are talking. I assumed they were. Our hospital is reviewing its relationship with Harbor Air. I looked at him. Because of the case? Because leadership credibility matters. Are there service problems? Nothing outside the usual. Then don't use me as a reason to disrupt patient transport. He studied my face. Travis involved our contract when he discussed you. I know. I can give the hospital board the board deck. How do you have it? I don't. I mean, if your lawyer can provide it. She can't provide confidential production for business pressure. Could I testify about what Travis told me? If you're asked through the case, tell the truth. I'm offering to help. I know. Then let me. I stirred my coffee. The easy move would have been to let Sam take the dispute into Harbor Air's client relationships. Travis cared about contracts. A hospital review would frighten the board more than my personnel record ever had. It would also frighten dispatchers, pilots, mechanics, and medical crews who had nothing to do with my removal. I don't want the contract used as leverage, I said. He used it first. That doesn't make it useful to me. Sam sat back. You're protecting Harbor Air. I'm protecting the work. He'll say that proves the company matters more than your claim. No, it proves I can separate them. He nodded slowly. If I receive a subpoena, I'll answer. That's all I'm asking. We finished our coffee without discussing Travis again. The final pretrial conference took place in Providence. The judge did not decide the facts. She confirmed which issues would be tried and which records could be used. The complete consulting agreement came in. Both versions of the board deck came in. My COO appointment, handoff, replacement directive, access instruction, and payroll cutoff came in. The limited military records came in. Harbor Air tried to exclude the payroll email as a settlement-related decision. Rachel showed it was an employment instruction sent before any settlement discussion. The judge allowed it. The company tried to keep the original board deck out because it had not been circulated. Rachel argued that the change between versions showed what leadership knew before choosing different language. The judge allowed both versions. Heather could testify about my examination, grounding, duty status, convalescence, and clearance. She could not discuss unrelated medical details. That boundary mattered to me. Authority had not given me a case. It had only drawn a clean line around the evidence we already had. The trial would be a bench trial. No jury. It would take place in open court. A date was set. Outside the courtroom, Travis caught up with me near the elevators. His lawyer remained several feet away. "You still have time to settle," he said. "Include restoration and correction. You know I won't agree to that. Then we don't have an agreement. You could take the money and start somewhere else. I don't want somewhere else recorded as the place I went after abandoning Harbor Air. We can use neutral language. Neutral is false when one side changed the record." He pressed the elevator button twice. "This trial will end our marriage," he said. I looked at him. "Did you decide that before or after you read Heather's testimony? I'm telling you the cost. I know the cost. You always choose duty. That's not what this is. It's what it has always been." The elevator doors opened. I stepped inside. Travis stayed in the hallway. For years, I had been afraid that insisting on respect would make me responsible for losing the marriage. That fear had helped him more than any lawyer. Now he had said the threat plainly. I did not ask him to reconsider. The night before trial, I placed my dark blue suit on the closet door. I checked the locking file case, then removed everything Rachel already had. Only my personal copies of the orders and return request remained. I put them in my bag. The green flight jacket stayed on the chair. I wouldn't wear it into court. My service did not need decoration there. Before turning off the light, I checked the trial notice one more time. 9 o'clock, Federal Courthouse, Providence, open courtroom. I set my alarm for 5:30 and left the signed settlement refusal on the table. The alarm went off in the dark. I showered, dressed, and made coffee I barely touched. The drive to Providence took less time than I expected. Rachel met me inside the courthouse. We passed through security and rode upstairs without talking. The courtroom doors were already open. Travis sat at the other table with his lawyer. He wore the same charcoal suit he used for board meetings. When I entered, he looked at me, then turned toward the front. I sat beside Rachel. At 9, the clerk called the case. The judge entered. Everyone stood. Harbor Air's lawyer gave his opening first. He said the company respected military service. He said it had supported me through one deployment and an extended absence. He described the leadership changes as necessary responses to uncertainty. Then he described the consulting position as a good faith offer. Harbor Air did not refuse to employ Ms. Hudson, he said. It offered her meaningful work suited to the business structure that existed when she returned. He said I rejected that work because I wanted the exact authority I had held before leaving. He said the company could not freeze its operations. He said Travis had acted as a responsible chief executive officer, not an angry husband. Travis listened without reacting. The false version sounded better in a courtroom than it had in our kitchen. The language was smoother. The pressure became restructuring. The waiver became an offer. The payroll cutoff became a consequence of declining available work. Nothing was technically hidden. It was simply arranged to make my absence look like the cause of everything that followed. Rachel stood. She did not talk about our marriage. She gave the court 5 dates. The date I received my appointment. The date I began protected service. The date Travis ordered the replacement structure. the date I requested re-employment, the date he stopped my pay. Then she sat down. I testified first. Rachel handed me my original appointment. Did you hold this position before your military service? Yes. Was it temporary? No. Did you prepare for your absence? Yes. She showed me the operational handoff. I explained the colored sections and temporary duty assignments. I explained the return line at the bottom. Did Travis receive it? Yes. How do you know? He replied that they would keep the seat warm. The message appeared on the courtroom screen. Travis looked down at his table. Rachel moved to my return request. Were you available to return on the date stated here? Yes. Did you ask to become a consultant? No. Did you resign as COO? No. Did you ask Harbor Air to classify your absence as personal leave? No. Then the board deck appeared. I read the sentence Travis had used in the meeting. You chose to prioritize the military and motherhood over this company. Rachel asked, Who said that? Travis. Where? In the Harbor Air boardroom. After you requested re-employment? Yes. Did he offer your COO position? No. What did the consulting position remove? My executive authority, staff supervision, operational approvals, board access, and more than half my salary. Why didn't you accept it? Because it was not re-employment in my position. It also required me to waive my claims. On cross-examination, Harbor Air's lawyer asked whether the company had continued operating without me. Yes. Did it complete flights? Yes. Did it serve clients? Yes. Did department leads take on additional responsibilities? Yes. Then your duties had been redistributed, temporarily according to my handoff. But business continued. That was the purpose of the handoff. He paused. During your convalescence, were you physically located in Rhode Island? Yes. Did you answer company emails? I answered limited questions about continuity, so you were capable of some civilian work. I was capable of answering a question. I was not released from military duty or medical restriction. Your civilian role did not require you to pilot an aircraft, correct? Correct. Then flight grounding did not prevent you from serving as COO. It confirmed that the military controlled my duty status. Travis didn't get to release me because he wanted help at the hangar. Rachel objected to the legal conclusion. The judge said she understood my answer as a description of what I believed at the time. The lawyer returned to the consulting offer. Harbor Air offered to pay you for work you could perform, at lower pay and lower authority. You refused it. Yes, and after refusing, you moved out of the marital home. Yes, because your husband would not restore you as COO. I moved because he tied my paycheck to a waiver and used our marriage to pressure me. He looked toward the judge. No further questions. Heather testified after lunch. She stated her role and identified the certified medical record. Rachel asked, Did you examine Lieutenant Colonel Hudson? Yes. Did you ground her? Yes. Was that grounding entered into an official military system? Yes. Did you later certify maternity convalescence? Yes. What was her status during that period? She remained a soldier in active duty status. Could she end the convalescent period on her own? No. Could her civilian employer end it? No. Heather spoke without anger. That made every answer clear. She explained that grounding was a medical restriction. The convalescent certification was not a request for personal vacation. It was part of my active duty medical record. Rachel asked, Could Megan lawfully resume military aviation duties simply because Travis considered her recovery unnecessary? No. Did she return promptly after clearance? Yes. Harbor Air's lawyer stood for cross-examination. You did not evaluate Harbor Air's civilian COO position, correct? Correct. You did not prohibit Megan from reading emails? Correct. You did not tell Harbor Air it must keep her office available? That is not within my authority. So your testimony does not establish which civilian position she should receive? No. My testimony establishes that her absence and convalescence were military, official, and medically directed. The lawyer asked several more versions of the same question. Heather gave the same answer. Protocol held. She did not exaggerate her authority. She did not tell the court how to rule. She confirmed the facts within her responsibility and stopped there. The company's earlier claim could not survive her testimony. My absence had not become personal because Travis found it inconvenient. The next morning, the documents came in through agreed records and prior testimony. My COO appointment established the position. The handoff established continuity planning. Travis's replacement directive showed he made the change permanent while I was still absent. The two board decks showed that accurate military language had been removed after my return request. The payroll instruction showed what happened when I rejected the waiver. One sequence. One decision carried through different records. Travis testified last. His lawyer began gently. Why did you change the leadership structure? The company needed certainty. Was the decision intended to punish Megan for military service? No. Why offer the consulting role? To keep her involved while protecting the structure that developed during her absence. Did you believe the offer was fair? Yes. Did your marriage influence the decision? I tried to keep the marriage separate. He looked at me when he said it. His lawyer asked about company growth and operational risk. Travis described long days, staffing pressure, and decisions that could not wait. Most of it was true. That was what made his version dangerous. The company had needed continuity. It did not follow that he could use the continuity plan to erase the person who created it. Rachel approached the witness stand. You received Megan's operational handoff? Yes. You replied, we'll keep the seat warm? It was an informal expression, but you understood she expected to return as COO at that time. Did she ever tell you otherwise? No. Rachel displayed the replacement directive. You wrote, do not hold decisions for Megan's anticipated return. Yes. You sent that before she requested re-employment. Yes. You had not received a resignation? No. You had not asked when military medical staff expected to clear her? I had asked Megan. You did not ask for certification? No. The earlier board deck appeared. You knew her absence included active duty military service and a medically directed extension. That was my understanding. The circulated deck called it voluntary personal leave. It used simplified language. Who made that change? I did. Why remove the military description? I wanted the board focused on the business issue. The military status was part of the business issue, wasn't it? Travis looked toward his lawyer. From Megan's perspective, from the company's legal obligations, his lawyer objected. The judge allowed Travis not to offer a legal opinion. Rachel moved to the boardroom statement. Did you tell Megan she chose to prioritize the military and motherhood over the company? Travis shifted in his seat. I said words to that effect. So yes. Had she chosen the timing of her medical clearance? No. Had she chosen to resign? No. Had she returned late after being cleared? No. Rachel placed the payroll email on the screen. Did you approve the instruction to change her to unpaid status at noon if she declined the consulting agreement and waiver? Yes. Did Dana ask whether military reemployment requirements had been reviewed? Yes. What did you do after receiving that question? I directed her to proceed. You did not pause the cutoff? No. You did not obtain an employment analysis first? I relied on company counsel generally. There was no message showing that. His lawyer did not ask him to identify one. Rachel returned to the consulting role. Could Megan supervise department heads? No. Could she approve operations? No. Did she retain board access? No. Was the pay equal? No. Was it COO? No. Then when she requested return as COO, you refused. I offered another role. That was not my question. Travis looked at me. No, he said. I did not restore her as COO. Rachel sat down. The judge heard closing arguments that afternoon. Harbor Air's lawyer said the company faced a difficult situation and made a reasonable restructuring decision. He asked the court not to punish a growing business for adapting. Rachel said the rule did not require the company to stop operating. It required the company to return a service member to the position she would have held if her protected absence had not interrupted her career. Then she pointed to the duty charts. The work remained. The authority had been taken by Travis. The lower role was conditioned on a waiver. The judge recessed for nearly an hour. When we returned, everyone stood again. The judge began with the facts. She found that I had left a permanent COO position for protected military service. She found that I planned for continuity, remained in official duty status during convalescence, and requested re-employment promptly after clearance. She found Harbor Air had redistributed my duties without eliminating them. Then she addressed the consulting offer. It was not the escalator position. It had lower pay, lower status, and materially reduced authority. Harbor Air had refused proper re-employment. The judge looked toward Travis's table. She found the violation willful. The accurate language had been changed. Human resources had raised the military re-employment issue. Travis proceeded anyway and cut my pay when I refused the waiver. The court ordered Harbor Air to restore me as chief operating officer. It ordered correction of the board deck and my personnel records. It awarded $84,000 in back pay. Then it awarded an equal $84,000 in liquidated damages. Harbor Air had 10 business days to restore my position, correct the records, and make payment. No one in the courtroom moved. Travis stared at the table. The clerk entered the judgment and the 10-business-day clock began. Rachel touched my arm before I stood. "Let them leave first," she said. Travis gathered his papers slowly. His lawyer spoke to him, but he didn't answer. When he passed our table, he kept his eyes forward. The courtroom door closed behind him. Only then did I breathe normally. Heather waited in the hallway. She had remained after testifying because the clinic had approved the time. When she saw me, she gave one firm nod. "Lieutenant Colonel," she said. "Doctor." It was the correct greeting. Nothing more was needed. Then she stepped closer. "Are you all right?" "I don't know yet. That's probably the honest answer. Thank you for coming." I confirmed my record. "You did more than that." "No," she said. "I did exactly that. You handled the rest." Rachel joined us. She thanked Heather and discussed the procedure for closing the limited medical release. Heather looked at me before leaving. "The company doesn't need the rest of your medical file. I know. Make sure it stays that way." "I will." She walked toward the elevator and did not look back. Outside, reporters were not waiting. There were no cameras. Federal court decisions don't always produce a crowd. The air was cold. People hurried along the sidewalk carrying lunch bags and backpacks. Rachel and I stood near the courthouse steps. "What happens now?" I asked. "We wait for compliance." "And if they don't comply?" "We return to court." "Will they appeal?" "They may consider it." I looked toward the street. Travis's car was already gone. "So I don't go to the hangar tomorrow." "No." "The order gives them 10 business days. Let them correct everything first. That mattered." I had spent months trying to enter an office that still carried my work, but not my name. I would not return early and allow partial compliance to become another favor from Travis. At the studio, I changed clothes and heated leftover soup. The judgment was available online by late afternoon. By 6, Sam sent a message, saw the result. "We'll follow your lead on company communication." I replied, "Continue normal operations. I'm not back yet." Carl sent nothing. Dana sent nothing. Travis sent one sentence. "Counsel will contact Rachel regarding compliance." There was no apology. The next morning, Harbor Air's lawyer requested a conference. The company would not seek a delay, but it wanted clarification about the scope of the COO restoration. Rachel read the message to me. They're asking whether Travis can retain the approvals he absorbed. What did the judgment say? You return to the position you would have held. Then he doesn't keep my authority because he got used to it. That's our response. The company also asked whether my return could be remote during an internal transition. I said no. I didn't need to occupy a chair every hour. I had worked remotely when weather or military duties required it, but a remote return arranged by Travis would let him keep me away from staff while claiming I had been restored. Rachel answered that I would return on site after records were corrected, payment was made, and executive access was active. On the third business day, Dana sent a draft personnel correction. It stated that my absence had been protected military service, including medically directed convalescence in active duty status. It removed the words voluntary and personal. It stated that I had timely requested reemployment. It restored my title as Chief Operating Officer without interruption in seniority. At the bottom, a new sentence said the consulting offer had been made after the company redistributed my duties. I called Rachel. "That last sentence isn't a correction," I said. "It's an explanation." "I agree. It makes the offer sound neutral. I'll send it back." The revised version arrived that afternoon without the sentence. The board correction took longer. Travis proposed adding a note to the existing deck. Rachel insisted that the false page itself be replaced and the board receive written notice of the correction. On the fifth business day, the corrected deck went to every board member. The notice identified the inaccurate description. It said the court had found that my absence was protected and that Harbor Air had willfully refused proper reemployment. Travis signed it as CEO. One of the board members called me afterward. She was the woman who had said I should keep the pages concerning me. "I received the correction," she said. "Good. I owe you an apology." I waited. We should have stopped that meeting. Yes, I believed Travis had already worked through the employment requirements. Did you ask? No. Then that's the part you need to remember. She was quiet. "Are you coming back?" she asked. "After full compliance?" "I hope you do. That will depend on whether the board is prepared to govern instead of assume." She thanked me for speaking with her. I did not tell her everything was fine. Her apology did not erase the silence around that table. It only told me she now understood that silence had a cost. On the sixth business day, Dana sent confirmation that my executive access had been restored. I did not test the badge. I asked for a written list of systems and approval rights. The list showed access to dispatch, maintenance planning, payroll review, vendor accounts, executive scheduling, and board materials. One item was missing. Final operational approval still routed to Travis. Rachel sent it back. 2 hours later, Dana issued a corrected list. Final operational approval returned to the COO. The practical meaning of the judgment appeared in one line on a system access form. Travis no longer controlled whether my title had authority behind it. The payment arrived on the 8th business day. The company deposited $84,000 in back pay and $84,000 in liquidated damages through separate transfers. I stared at the account for a long time. The number looked large inside the studio. It did not feel like extra money. The back pay filled the hole created when Travis stopped my salary. Part of it covered the mortgage payment I had rescued, rent, legal installments, and months of ordinary expenses. The liquidated amount existed because the violation had been willful. It was not a prize. It was the cost the company paid for proceeding after Dana raised the question. I paid the remaining legal balance. I set aside what I would owe in taxes. Then I moved enough into savings to replace what I had used. I did not buy anything. That evening, Travis asked to meet. I suggested the coffee shop near the airport. He asked if we could speak at the house. I said no. He arrived before me and chose a table near the back. He wasn't wearing a suit. He had on a gray sweater I had given him several years earlier. For a moment, seeing it hurt more than the courtroom had. I sat across from him. "The payment cleared," I said. "I know, the board and personnel corrections are complete. Yes, access was corrected." He nodded. We had reached the point where the court order was satisfied on paper. The marriage was not part of that order. Travis folded his hands around his coffee. "I'm sorry," he said. I said nothing. He looked down. "I've been trying to figure out how to say it without sounding like I'm only saying it because I lost." "Have you?" "Yes. And I don't know if there is a way. That's honest." He took a breath. I convinced myself the company needed one person in control. When you were gone, that person was me. When you came back, I treated your return like a threat to something I had already claimed. I watched his hands. He wasn't twisting his wedding ring. I used the marriage to pressure you, he continued. I used the dinner. I used the house. I used the bills. Then I told you to keep the marriage separate when it suited me. Yes. I changed the board language because the military version made what I was doing look worse. It made it accurate. I know. That was the first time he said it without qualifying the answer. He looked at me. I approved the payroll cutoff because I thought you would sign. I know. I thought you'd protect us. You meant the picture of us. Yes. The coffee shop door opened behind me. Cold air moved through the room. Travis waited until it closed. I'm not asking you to give back the judgment, he said. I'm not asking you to change the correction or keep any of it quiet. That mattered. It did not restore anything. What are you asking? I said. If there is any chance for the marriage. I looked through the window at cars moving along the wet road. I don't know. He nodded once. But I know what isn't enough, I said. An apology. Yes. What would be enough? I can't give you a checklist. I need somewhere to start. You start by respecting the judgment when nobody is watching. You stop treating my authority as borrowed from you. You don't punish Dana, Carl, or anyone else for telling the truth. I won't. You don't get credit for promises. His face tightened, but he nodded. I understand. No, you understand the sentence. The rest takes time. He looked at his coffee. Will you come home? No. Will you still return to Harbor Air? Yes, after everything is verified. Can we talk while you do that? About work, yes. About us, not at the hangar. He accepted that. I leaned forward. Reconciliation can be considered only after sustained respect. Not one meeting, not one apology. Not compliance performed because a judge ordered it. How long? I don't know. He let out a breath and looked toward the door. I'll take that, he said. It isn't an offer. I know. We left separately. On the 9th business day, Dana sent a photograph of my office door. A new COO nameplate had been installed. I saved the image but did not go in. One obligation remained before I returned. The same company that had treated my protected absence as abandonment still had no neutral military leave process. Without one, the next service member would depend on whether Travis felt inconvenienced. I wrote the first item on my return plan. Military leave decisions require independent human resources review and written status verification before any change to position, pay, access, or authority. Dana read it the next morning. This would take the decision away from one executive, she said. That's the point. We met by video. She had the draft open on one screen and the company's old leave policy on another. The old policy covered ordinary vacation, illness, and unpaid personal leave. Military service appeared in one short paragraph near the bottom. It said employees should give notice when practical. That was all. No status changes based on assumptions, I said. Orders go into the file. The employee gets written confirmation. Temporary duty assignments stay temporary unless there is a separate business reason supported by records. And if the return date changes, Human Resources confirms why before anyone touches pay or access. Dana typed, what if the reason involves medical information? Human Resources verifies status, not diagnosis. Managers get only what they need. She nodded. Independent review should include counsel, she said. Yes, but not counsel chosen to defend a decision after it's made. I'll write it as review before action. Good. We worked through the rest that morning. The process required a written handoff when practical. It also required a return plan before the employee came back. The position comparison had to include pay, authority, seniority, and reporting lines. A lower role could not be called equivalent simply because it offered some work. When we finished, Dana leaned back. I wish we'd had this last year. So do I. She looked toward her office door. Travis approved me working directly with you. That's appropriate. He didn't add conditions. That was the first test. He had authority to interfere with the work. He didn't. On the 10th business day, Rachel confirmed full compliance. The corrected records were in place. The payment had cleared. My access matched my role. The board had received the corrected deck. I returned to the hangar the following Monday. My badge opened the employee entrance. Carl was at the operations desk. He saw me and stood. "I told you not to do that," I said. "I remember." He remained standing. Then he smiled. "Welcome back, Chief Operating Officer. Thank you." He handed me the current flight schedule. There was no speech, no applause. The phones kept ringing. That felt right. Dana met me near the stairs. She carried a folder containing the new access list and the draft military leave protocol. "Everything worked this morning?" she asked. My badge did. "Office 2? I haven't tried it." She looked surprised. "I wanted to come through operations first," I said. We reviewed the active missions at Carl's desk. Weather near New Bedford had created another diversion concern. The printed alternate list now showed the correct after-hours number. Carl tapped it, updated the paper backup and the shared file. Good. He glanced at Travis's office above the floor. "Who has final approval today?" he asked. "I do." It was not a challenge. He needed the answer for operations. I gave it clearly. Travis came downstairs a few minutes later. He stopped beside the desk. "Megan has final operational approval," he said. "Root executive decisions to her." Carl nodded. "Understood." Travis did not add that he remained CEO. He did not explain the judgment. He did not soften my authority. That was the second test. The first week was awkward. Department heads had learned to take every difficult question to Travis. Some continued walking past my office out of habit. When that happened, he sent them back. On Wednesday, a maintenance lead asked him to approve a vendor change. Travis said, "That belongs with the COO." The lead came downstairs and placed the request on my desk. I reviewed the maintenance history and denied the change. The proposed vendor could not meet our response times. Travis asked about it later. I showed him the comparison. He read it and said, "All right." No argument. No private override. The next day, he sent the same vendor a written notice confirming my decision. That mattered more than the apology in the coffee shop. He was respecting an answer he did not choose. At the end of the week, Dana and I presented the military leave protocol to the board. The woman who had called me after the correction asked whether every leave request needed outside legal review. "No," I said. "Only a proposed adverse change involving position, pay, access, or authority." Travis sat at the other end of the table. One member asked, "Does this limit the CEO's ability to respond during a long absence?" Travis answered before I did. "It limits the company's ability to misclassify protected service. Temporary operational decisions can still be made." He used the correct fact. No one looked at me for approval. I gave it anyway with a small nod. The board adopted the protocol without opposition. Dana entered it into the company system and scheduled training for managers. She led the sessions. I attended the first one but did not tell my story. The policy didn't need my humiliation to make sense. It needed clear steps. A month later, the process received its first test. A dispatcher submitted orders for annual military training. His supervisor forwarded them to Dana and asked whether his system access should be disabled. Dana answered in writing. Access would remain active unless security required a temporary restriction. Any restriction would have a start date, an end date, and a stated reason. His duties would be covered temporarily. His position would not be treated as vacant. The supervisor followed the process. The dispatcher left and returned without an argument. Nobody thanked me. That felt right, too. My marriage moved more slowly. Travis and I remained separated. I kept the studio even after moving to the rear apartment. We met once a week outside work. Sometimes we had coffee. Sometimes we walked near the bay. He did not ask me to come home again. One evening, he brought a folder from the house. "I found these in the office bookcase," he said. They were old photographs from Harbor Air's first year. In one, I was sitting on the hangar floor assembling office chairs. Travis was behind me, holding the instructions upside down. I don't remember that, I said. I do. He placed the picture on the table. I used to know what you did because I was standing beside you. I waited. Then the company grew and I started treating your work like background. Yes, I'm trying not to do that now. Trying isn't the same as changing. I know. He took the photographs back to the house. He did not use them to ask for forgiveness. The next week, he missed our coffee meeting because of a client call. He sent a message 20 minutes before. I'm sorry, I should have protected the time. Can we choose another day? The old Travis would have said the call ran long and expected me to understand. I offered Thursday. He arrived early. That was a small change. I watched to see whether it lasted. At work, he disagreed with me over staffing for a weekend schedule. He wanted fewer people on standby. I wanted a full second crew because of the weather. We argued in my office with the door closed. He said, "You're planning for the worst case. That's the job. The cost is high. So is a missed transfer." He looked at the forecast again, then he said, "Make the call." I kept the second crew. The weather shifted overnight. Both crews were used. On Monday, he came into my office. "You were right," he said. "I know." He almost laughed. Then he stopped himself and said, "The schedule worked." It was a better answer. He was learning not to turn respect into charm. Several months passed before I invited him to the studio. He arrived with groceries and cooked dinner in the narrow kitchen. He asked where I kept the serving spoons. "Second drawer," I said. He found them without another question. We ate at the small table. He did not talk about the company until I brought it up. He did not ask when I would move home. When he left, he washed both plates and broke down the delivery box near the door. I noticed. I did not treat it as proof of anything. The next morning, he sent one message. "Thank you for having me." I replied, "You're welcome." That was as far as we went. Respect had become visible. Trust had not returned at the same speed. I still checked important conversations in writing. I still kept my documents in the locking case. I still paid my own rent and maintained a separate account. Travis knew those things. He did not complain about them. Rachel closed the case after confirming the corrected records remained in place. Heather's limited medical release was closed. The unrelated portions of my file stayed private. Dana completed manager training. Carl stopped standing when I entered operations, though he still did it sometimes when he was tired. The board began sending executive materials to both Travis and me instead of assuming one of us would brief the other. The company did not become perfect. It became accountable in ways it had not been before. If this story moved you, subscribe, and let me know where you are watching from. One Friday evening, I stayed late after the last scheduled transfer departed. Rain tapped against the office window. The hangar lights reflected across the wet pavement outside. Dana left the final protocol audit on my desk. Every military leave file was complete. Travis knocked on the open door. "Need anything before I go?" he asked. "No, I'm finished." He nodded. "Good night, Megan." "Good night." He left without waiting for more. I closed the audit folder and locked it in the cabinet. Then I opened the small wardrobe beside the window. My green flight jacket had remained at the studio since the trial. I had brought it back that morning without deciding where it belonged. The restored nameplate caught the light from the desk lamp. I placed my flight jacket beside the restored COO nameplate in the Quonset office.